You have transmigrated into a cultivation world. For 15 years as a mediocre disciple with 3 spiritual roots, determined to be of lower middle aptitude, you could only wait at the foot of the main peak to be selected by the various peaks. Even the fellow disciples around you were whispering, all because you stayed in the demon-suppressing peak for too long, which they considered ominous. The entire sect dared not step foot on that ghost peak which suppresses ancient demons, yet you stared fixedly at the empty spot of the demon-suppressing peak, just because the system that had just exploded in your mind told you. Join the demon-suppressing peak. Reward: 5 elements spirit body. The area below the main peak was crowded with people, and before the morning mist had dissipated, the sides of the mountain path were already packed with newly arrived disciples. You mixed into the crowd, outwardly looking at the towering mountains, but inwardly your mind was flooded with countless thoughts. In your previous life, you were an ordinary office worker, whose only pastime was staying up late to play the game Tale of Immortal. One day, you downloaded a modified version with extra content from a mysterious forum, and just as you were about to experience it, the console let out a shrill roar, and when you opened your eyes again, you were an infant, placed under an old tree at the entrance of Shui village. For 15 years, you plowed fields, carried water, and chopped wood, thinking you were living out a farming-style script, until today, when the Wuji Immortal Sect's recruitment squad passed by, and the spiritual detection bead lit up with 3 rays of light: water, earth, and fire spiritual roots, which in the cultivation world is but lower middle aptitude, but at least you made it into the Immortal Sect. Now you stand here, waiting for the elders of the various peaks to choose. If chosen, you become an initiated disciple. If not, you can only be a servant. In the crowd, a boy with gold and water dual spiritual roots was already surrounded by veteran disciples chatting with him. You didn't care, and continued to observe your surroundings. The Wuji Immortal Sect has 10 peaks, 9 of which have grand displays. Only the spot for the demon-suppressing peak was empty. That godforsaken place, the demon-suppressing peak, let alone cultivating, just staying there for too long felt ominous. The senior brother assigned there in the previous batch almost fell into chi deviation within the first month, and he struggled desperately just to get transferred out. I'd rather be a servant than go to that ghost place. You listened to these discussions, but inwardly you were calculating. The demon-suppressing peak, the least regarded branch among the 10 peaks, suppresses an ancient demon beneath it. The peak master is a human immortal stage female elder, but she hasn't recruited a new disciple for 5 consecutive years. Who would dare to go? Just then, a roar sounded in your mind, and lines of golden text hung before your eyes. Primordial creation choice system activated. Choice 1. Join the demon-suppressing peak. Reward: 5 elements spirit body. Choice 2. Join any of the other 9 peaks. Reward: longevity plus 5 years. Your pupils shrank sharply. 5 elements spirit body. The legendary body where the 5 elements generate each other, forming a self-contained cycle, with spiritual energy that never exhausts. The cultivation speed is no slower than a single spiritual root, and one can control all 5 attributes simultaneously. This special physique, which only exists in ancient books, is far rarer than a normal heaven spirit root, while the other option is 5 years of longevity, which is laughably pathetic. You made your decision almost instantly. Joining the demon-suppressing peak has risks, and suppressing an ancient demon sounds terrifying, but having read so many Xianxia novels in your past life, you understand too well. Such a sinister and eerie place, which everyone avoids, often hides supreme opportunities. Who knows? The old demon suppressed under the peak might even become a grandpa guide for you in the future. You raised your head, your gaze crossing over the bustling crowds, straight toward the empty spot of the demon-suppressing peak, and then you took a step, walking toward that direction. Behind you came the discussions. That guy is crazy. Where is he going? Isn't that the direction of the demon-suppressing peak? You didn't look back, your footsteps falling on the bluestone path, each step taken solidly. The spot for the demon-suppressing peak was no longer empty. You stood there, glanced at the dumbfounded fellow disciples beside you, and the corners of your mouth curled up slightly. 15 years of an ordinary life were enough. Next, it's time to play something different. After making the choice, Shui Yan no longer hesitated, and walked steadily toward the direction of the demon-suppressing peak. On the high platform, the selection for each peak was ongoing, while in front of the demon-suppressing peak's location, it was completely empty, not even a disciple in charge of reception. Shui Yan stood for a while, before noticing a woman sitting in the corner. The woman looked to be about 30 years old, though the age of a cultivator cannot be judged by appearance. She wore a black Taoist robe, her dark hair held up in a cloud bun, wearing no makeup, her face cold and clear like frost on jade. Shui Yan stepped forward, bowed and saluted. Disciple Shui Yan greets the senior. May I ask, is the senior from the demon-suppressing peak? The woman glanced at him. I am the peak master of the demon-suppressing peak. Taoist named Xian Qing. You want to come to the demon-suppressing peak? Shui Yan was shocked inside. This is the human immortal stage peak master of the demon-suppressing peak? She looks far too ordinary. He suppressed the shock in his heart, and replied respectfully. The disciple indeed has the intention to join the demon-suppressing peak. Peak master Xian Qing put down the bamboo slip in her hand, and looked at Shui Yan seriously for a few moments. Have you thought it through? The situation at the demon-suppressing peak? You should have heard something about it. That place is not a joke. Cultivating there, demon energy infiltration is a daily occurrence, and and I will state the ugly truth first. If you want to change sects midway, or seek other opportunities elsewhere, I will not speak for you. By then, no other peak will want you. You will have to find your own way. If you have nowhere to go, the only option will be expulsion from the Wuji immortal sect. These words were spoken with great gravity. If it were anyone else, they might have already retreated. But Shui Yan just smiled slightly, and bowed again. The disciple's heart is set, and I will never regret it. Peak Master Xian Qing stared at Shui Yan for a long while, as if trying to find a trace of hesitation or falsehood on his face. Shui Yan looked back frankly, his gaze clear and firm. Finally, Peak Master Xian Qing nodded slightly, and didn't say anything more, just raised her hand to signal. Then you shall wait. After dark, follow me back to the peak. Shui Yan acknowledged, and retreated to the side. Time passed bit by bit. The selections of the various peaks ended one after another, and the new disciples followed their masters or senior brothers and sisters away, with smiles of excitement or satisfaction on their faces. The number of people below the main peak dwindled, and by evening, only Shui Yan remained, standing alone in the empty square. During this time, a few veteran disciples passed by, casting curious or pitiful glances at him. Which peak is that kid from? Why hasn't he left yet? Looks like he's going to the demon-suppressing peak. What? The demon-suppressing peak? He must be crazy. Indeed, I wonder which tendon in his head went wrong. Sigh. Young people don't know the height of the sky or the depth of the earth. Once he gets there, he'll know how tough it is. If I were him, I'd rather be a servant disciple than go to the demon-suppressing peak. Who wouldn't? Shui Yan ignored them, treating it as nothing more than wind blowing past his ears. The sun set in the west. The last rays of glow on the horizon were gradually swallowed by twilight. The disciples selected by the various peaks had long since dispersed, leaving only Shui Yan and Peak Master Xian Qing, who was resting with her eyes closed on a bamboo chair in the distance. The moon hung on the willow branches. The stars filled the sky. Peak Master Xian Qing finally opened her eyes, stood up, and beckoned to Shui Yan, then took out a magical artifact from her sleeve, shaped like a willow leaf, entirely emerald green, emitting a faint fluorescent light. She tossed it, and the willow leaf grew with the wind, turning into a skiff the size of several feet in the blink of an eye, hovering in midair. Get on. She stepped onto the willow leaf boat first, without looking back. Shui Yan followed carefully, feeling a warm touch under his feet, as if stepping on a real willow leaf, slightly soft. The willow leaf boat rose slowly, the scenery around them gradually shrinking. Peak Master Xian Qing cast a spell, and the willow leaf boat accelerated sharply, breaking through the air. The night wind was strong, blowing Shui Yan's robes until they fluttered. He squinted his eyes and looked ahead, seeing an isolated peak rising abruptly in the distance, completely out of place with the surrounding mountains. The mountain was entirely pitch black, devoid of grass or trees, its surface covered with dense patterns, and atop the peak, the outline of a great hall could be vaguely seen, with a massive light orb hovering above the hall roof. Even from afar, this peak gave one a sense of oppression. This was the demon-suppressing peak. The willow leaf boat descended in front of a courtyard on the mountainside. Shui Yan jumped off, and looked around, finding that although the courtyard wasn't large, it was quite elegant. 3 main rooms, one side room on each side, and a water well in the yard, with the moonlight reflected in it, sparkling. This is your dwelling. Peak Master Xian Qing retracted the willow leaf boat, and pointed to the courtyard. Dry rations and water are in the kitchen. Enough for you to eat for 10 days or a fortnight. Shui Yan replied. Yes, thank you, Master, for the arrangement. Deep down, he nodded slightly. This environment was much better than he had imagined. He had originally thought the demon-suppressing peak would be a ghost realm of horror and darkness, but he hadn't expected such a clean and tidy courtyard. Although it couldn't compare to the luxury and grandeur of the other peaks, it was quiet and elegant, which suited his needs perfectly. Peak Master Xian Qing waved her hand. Since you have just entered my sect, first familiarize yourself with the environment of the demon-suppressing peak. As for cultivation techniques, come to the demon-suppressing hall on the peak tomorrow, and I will explain things to you in detail. The disciple understands. Peak Master Xian Qing nodded. Her figure flickered, and she turned into a stream of light, disappearing into the night sky in the blink of an eye. Shui Yan watched the direction where the light disappeared, a trace of envy flashing in his eyes. Is this the means of an immortal? On the way to the Wuji immortal sect, the deacon disciple in charge had already explained the cultivation system of the immortal world to them. It is a long road, starting from the initial chi refining, followed by foundation establishment, golden core, nascent soul, spirit severing, void refining, integration, Mahayana, tribulation, and finally, the human immortal stage. Each major realm is divided into several minor realms, step by step, every bit difficult. It is said that in the entire Wuji immortal sect, there are only a few people who have reached the human immortal stage, and his master, Peak Master Xian Qing, is one of them. Human immortal. That is a height that many cultivators cannot reach in their entire lives. Shui Yan withdrew his gaze, and turned to walk into the courtyard. He closed the courtyard door, and walked into the main room. The room was simply furnished. A wooden bed, a desk, a chair, and an oil lamp. On the wall hung a landscape painting, depicting immortal mountains and pavilions amidst clouds and mist. Although plain, it exuded an elegant charm everywhere. Shui Yan sat on the edge of the bed, about to sort out his chaotic thoughts, when a prompt suddenly appeared before his eyes. Choice completed. Host host has joined the demon-suppressing peak. Reward being distributed. Congratulations to the host for obtaining 5 elements spirit body. A warm stream of heat rose from Shui Yan's dantian, quickly spreading to his limbs and bones, as if soaking in a hot spring. Indescribably comfortable. Shui Yan closed his eyes, carefully experiencing the changes in his body. He had thought that obtaining the 5 elements spirit body would be a earth-shaking event, like meridians being reversed, spiritual energy exploding, or heaven-sent signs, but there was no movement at all. The warm flow lasted for about a quarter of an hour before gradually dissipating. His bodily sensation seemed no different from before. If not for the system clearly prompting that the reward had been issued, Shui Yan would have almost thought he had been scammed. That's it? Shui Yan reluctantly sensed again for a while, and finally discovered a subtle difference. His body seemed to have become sensitive to the surrounding environment. There was a faint aura in the air, slowly seeping into his body from all directions. Shui Yan lay on the bed, thinking that having obtained such a great opportunity as the 5-element spirit body, he would be able to sleep soundly, save his energy, and go to the demon-suppressing hall tomorrow to ask his master for cultivation methods. However, having closed his eyes for only a moment, an unexplainable feeling of restlessness welled up from the bottom of his heart. At first, he thought it was just him being in a new place and not sleeping well, so he turned over, and wrapped himself tighter in the quilt. But that restlessness did not subside. Instead, it became more intense. His chest felt like it was blocked by a ball of cotton, making it hard to breathe, and his heartbeats suddenly became chaotic, becoming faster and more irregular. Shui Yan sat up, frowning. Something's not right. This feeling came too suddenly, and it didn't feel like normal insomnia or homesickness. He considered himself steady-tempered, and had always been content with whatever came his way. He hadn't even cried when he was first placed in that broken cradle in Shui village, so how could he be so uneasy just from changing his sleeping place? However, Shui Yan did not know that the 5-element spirit body's ability to perceive heaven and earth spiritual energy is far beyond that of ordinary people. This would normally be a great thing, but the spiritual energy of the demon-suppressing peak is vastly different from other places. The spiritual energy here is constantly permeated with faint traces of demon energy. Ordinary disciples cultivating on the demon-suppressing peak are affected by the demon energy inherent to the peak, which is a process of slow accumulation over a long period. But Shui Yan's 5-element spirit body is exceptionally sensitive to all auras in the world. Those demon energies, upon touching his body, swarmed in like ants seeing honey. Thus, on the very first night of obtaining the 5-element spirit body, he experienced the suffering of demon energy infiltration at high speed, which usually takes months or even years for other demon-suppressing peak disciples to experience. Restlessness, palpitations, tinnitus, chest tightness. These were all signs of spiritual unrest. If left unchecked, it wouldn't take long for hallucinations to arise, and his sanity to become confused. Just as Shui Yan was feeling chaotic in his heart, secretly suspicious, detected that the host is on the demon-suppressing peak of the Wuji immortal sect. Due to the 5-element spirit body's extreme affinity for heaven and earth auras, the rate of demon energy infiltration has increased, and there are signs of mild mental confusion. Current fate choice triggered. Choice 1. Mere demon energy is nothing to be concerned about. My generation of cultivators should suppress it with a firm Tao heart. Ignore it, and instead use this opportunity to comprehend the secrets of demon energy. Reward. Supreme right heart demon suppressing chi controlling return to origin manual. Manual description. This is the long-lost foundation inheritance of the Wuji immortal sect's demon suppressing line. It cannot be obtained unless one is a direct disciple of the demon suppressing peak. Its essence lies in the word right heart. If the heart is right, all evil is warded off. If the mind is stable, no demons can disturb. Cultivating this technique can guard the heart and spirit, and remain unmoved by external demons. Further, it can refine the demon energy that enters the body into pure spiritual energy, turning harm into benefit, and waste into treasure. This technique has 9 levels. Level 1, once perfected, can reach the peak of chi refining. Every level increased thereafter corresponds to the improvement of a major realm. Choice 2. The environment of the demon-suppressing peak is truly unbearable for even a second. The world is vast. Why can't one cultivate elsewhere? Why suffer this indignity here? Pack up immediately and leave this peak tonight. Reward. Top-grade magical treasure. 9 heavens wind controlling profound heaven boat. Magical treasure description. This boat is made with 9 heavens profound iron as its skeleton and heavenly silkworm spirit silk as its sail. When activated, it is like a shooting star chasing the moon, traveling thousands of miles in an instant. Shui Yan finished reading the 2 options, meditating silently for a moment. The reward for choice 2 is the 9 heavens wind controlling profound heaven boat. A top-grade magical treasure. The name alone indicates it is no ordinary object. Such a treasure, let alone him, who is currently just a mortal who has not even stepped into cultivation. Even a golden core cultivator would inevitably feel covetous, and turn red with envy. But right now, he has absolutely no ability to use it. Although Shui Yan has not officially entered cultivation. He had learned enough from the deacon disciples on the way to the Wuji immortal sect about basic common sense regarding the cultivation world. He remembered the classification of magical treasures clearly. In the cultivation world, artifacts are divided into 5 levels from low to high: Dharma artifacts, magical treasures, spirit treasures, Tao artifacts, and immortal artifacts. Dharma artifacts are the most basic, mostly used by chi refining and foundation establishment cultivators. Magical treasures are a big step higher, usually crafted by golden core cultivators. A superior grade magical treasure is enough to make a golden core cultivator remain in the dominant position among their peers, and move about recklessly. Going higher are spirit treasures. Spirit treasures have long transcended the category of mortal artifacts, mostly developing their own intelligence, nurturing artifact spirits, and being able to recognize their masters autonomously, protecting their masters with heart and will. Their power can shake heaven and earth, and only those at the void refining or integration stages can barely control them. As for Tao artifacts and immortal artifacts, those are legendary items that only big shots at the tribulation or human immortal levels are qualified to touch. The 9 heavens wind controlling profound heaven boat from choice 2, in the hands of a golden core or nascent soul cultivator, would be like adding wings to a tiger. But in the hands of a mortal like him who hasn't even entered chi refining, Shui Yan could imagine the scene, and couldn't help but shake his head secretly. That would be like a 3-year-old child walking down the street carrying a nuclear warhead. Forget about using it, just revealing it would be enough to invite a fatal disaster. In the cultivation world, where the strong prey on the weak, killing for treasure is common. He is a little shrimp with no cultivation. Carrying a top-grade magical treasure, wouldn't that be suicide? What's more, even if no one coveted or robbed it, he wouldn't be able to use it at all. Operating a magical treasure requires a continuous supply of spiritual energy, but he has no spiritual energy in his body at all. The 9 heavens wind controlling profound heaven boat is just a piece of iron for him. It wouldn't even fly. And the reward for choice 1, the supreme right heart demon suppressing chi controlling return to origin manual, although it sounds less impressive than a magical treasure, is a real foundation for securing his life. It can not only stabilize the mind and resist demon energy infiltration, but also refine the surrounding demon energy for his own use, which is simply a God-sent divine skill tailored for demon-suppressing peak disciples. Besides, this technique is the long-lost foundation inheritance of the Wuji immortal sect's demon-suppressing line. Long lost. Shui Yan keenly caught this keyword. The demon-suppressing peak has existed for who knows how many years, with generations of peak masters and disciples coming and going. There should have been a mature cultivation system, but if the system implies it, the foundation technique of the demon-suppressing line is actually lost. No wonder those disciples were tortured by demon energy one by one and ran away or jumped ship. It turns out they didn't even have the most basic heart-protecting divine skill. However, this technique is now in his hands. Shui Yan's lips curled up slightly, a smile spreading. He muttered in his heart, "System, I choose choice 1. Choice confirmed. Reward being distributed. Congratulations to the host for obtaining Supreme Right Heart Demon Suppressing Chi Controlling Return to Origin Manual. A massive flood of information surged into Shui Yan's mind. This is not a traditional inheritance of scriptures and text, but a high-level divine soul infusion. Every character, every sentence, every level of profound mystery in the technique. There is no need to think or comprehend. It is already thoroughly understood. Shui Yan closed his eyes, quietly digesting the knowledge that surged into his mind. The Supreme Right Heart Demon Suppressing Chi Controlling Return to Origin Manual. Although the name is long, the core essence is extremely refined. Right heart. All laws under heaven are born from the heart. If the heart is right, all evil is warded off. If the heart is stable, all demons are not disturbed. The cultivators who fell into chi deviation due to demon energy infiltration, in the end, they were trapped by their own inner demons. Demon energy is just an external trigger. What truly leads to madness is the greed, hatred, and ignorance hidden in the bottom of one's heart. And the essence of this inherited divine skill is to cultivate the heart and guard the spirit, using the true heart to suppress all demons, and using righteousness to control turbid energy. The first level of the Supreme Right Heart Demon Suppressing Chi Controlling Return to Origin Manual is named Right Heart. Through exclusive mind method chants and breathing techniques, it slowly cleanses the distractions in the heart, making the state of mind like a mirror or still water, unmoved by external objects. Refining this level allows one to enter the chi refining stage steadily, and the firmness of the heart and spirit is far beyond that of cultivators in the same realm. The second level is named Chi Control, which, based on Right Heart, actively draws the energy from around the body into it, guiding it into the predetermined circulation path in the meridians, and using the mind method to strip away the dark, evil impurities from the aura, leaving only pure heaven and earth spiritual energy, to be refined for one's own use. From the third level onwards, they are all deeper refinement techniques, with each level bringing new transformations and magical, supernatural effects, until the 9th level, the tribulation stage. Shui Yan opened his eyes, and let out a long breath. Although the technique has been thoroughly understood, truly cultivating it ultimately requires moving step by step, following the footprint. This is like him in his previous life having looked through all kinds of fitness tutorials online, knowing the essentials of movements by heart. But if he really had to do 100 push-ups, he would still be gasping for breath. But thorough understanding is the greatest convenience after all. He doesn't need to be like other cultivators, holding a manual and scratching his head over the profound meanings, worrying about understanding it wrong, and falling into qi deviation. Shui Yan sat cross-legged on the bed, his back straight, hands naturally resting on his knees, his breathing gradually becoming even and long. In the quiet night, only the sound of Shui Yan's heartbeat could be heard thumping steadily in his chest. Suddenly, the five-element spirit body began to reveal its extraordinary nature. Within just a few breaths, Shui Yan clearly perceived the heaven and earth spiritual energy in his environment. This was a wonderful world he had never experienced before. Gold, cyan, blue, red, yellow, the five-colored spiritual energy intertwined and coiled, like ribbons of color, flowing slowly in the air, beautiful to behold. However, wrapped around these spiritual energies, were strands of gray-black aura, like mud mixed into a clear stream. Shui Yan understood inwardly. This must be the demon energy of the demon-suppressing peak that others talk about with fear. Rumor has it, this demon energy is emitted by the ancient demon suppressed under the peak, seeping out year after year, contaminating the heaven and earth spiritual energy of the entire mountain. On other peaks, disciples absorb pure spiritual energy, and cultivate like fish in water. But on the demon-suppressing peak, every time one breathes, it is inevitable to inhale these demon energies along with it, like drinking poison to quench thirst. Over time, the mind and spirit must be harmed. If it were any other new disciple, they might be panicking now. But Shui Yan was not afraid. He silently recited the chant of the first level of the Supreme Right Heart Demon Suppressing Qi Controlling Return to Origin Manual. Each character of the chant was like a pebble, thrown into the lake of his heart, stirring up ripples, smoothing away the distracting thoughts one by one. His state of mind gradually calmed down. Shui Yan's breathing became slower and deeper. Every time he inhaled, a strand of spiritual energy carrying demon energy flowed into his body along the meridians. Just as he was about to go further and guide these auras to his dantian, detected that the host has performed the technique for the first time, successfully absorbing heaven and earth spiritual energy into the body, officially embarking on the path of cultivation. This is the first pass on the path of cultivation, concerning the future direction of the Tao path. Choice 1. The path of the genius, peerless in battle, can obtain battle soul. Battle soul. This is the heritage of the ancient god of war. After merging with the divine soul, the host's combat potential will be thoroughly stimulated. The more dangerous the situation, the more the combat power will surge. The more severe the injuries, the more terrifying the recovery ability. Choice 2. The steady path, hiding sharpness. Open the system's exclusive function, primordial formless. Primordial formless. After opening this function, the host can freely adjust the display of their external cultivation realm, and can also perceive any peeping from others. Shui Yan saw these two options, and his eyelids flickered slightly. After careful consideration, Shui Yan felt that Choice 1's battle soul didn't really suit him. He wasn't the type who enjoyed killing. Secondly, even if this talent is powerful, it cannot guarantee absolute immortality. For example, if he were to meet an enemy at the golden core stage, the other side would slap him, and he wouldn't even have the chance to be in the low health state, directly turning into ashes. Then the so-called counterkill in a desperate situation would become a giant joke. The person is gone. How can one counterkill? Looking at Choice 2, primordial formless, Shui Yan read the description word by word, and his eyes grew brighter the more he read. Hiding cultivation, freely adjusting the external realm. Needless to say, in a world where the strong prey on the weak, hiding one's strength is equivalent to having an extra trump card for survival. The enemy thinks you are immortal, but in fact you are at Qi refining. The enemy thinks you are at foundation establishment, but in fact you are already at golden core. Catching them off guard, attacking when unprepared. The tactical value of this is immeasurable, but what truly moved Shui Yan was the additional function of sensing peeping. Any attempt to peek at him, he could perceive instantly. What does this mean? It means, from now on, no one can peek at him without his knowledge. Shui Yan took a deep breath, the corners of his mouth rising slightly, revealing a very satisfied smile. He muttered in his heart, "System, I choose Choice 2. Choice 2 confirmed. Reward being distributed. System function, primordial formless has been opened. Can be activated with a single thought. No extra operation needed." Shui Yan tried to recite in his heart, "Display my cultivation as mortal. No cultivation." As soon as the thought moved, an indescribable feeling spread from the center of his eyebrows, like an invisible thin veil, gently covering Shui Yan's divine soul. Shui Yan tried to spread his attention outward again, perceiving for a moment. This is the peeping perception function of primordial formless. He wanted to confirm if it took effect. No sense of being peeked at. Very good. He closed his eyes again, and sank his heart and spirit into cultivation. The advantage of the five-element spirit body was brought into full play during the cultivation process. Ordinary cultivators absorbing heaven and earth spiritual energy need to guide each attribute separately, refining them separately, like holding water with hands, needing to keep their 10 fingers together to barely catch some. But the five-element spirit body is different. The spiritual energy of the 5 attributes, like 5 rivers, simultaneously surges into his meridians, not only not conflicting with each other, but because of the principle of the 5 elements generating each other, they nourish and promote each other. Gold generates water, water generates wood, wood generates fire, fire generates earth, earth generates gold. This is a perfect closed loop. Every meridian is operating efficiently, converting external spiritual energy into his own spiritual power. And that gray-black demon energy, carried along with the spiritual energy, was refined according to the guidance of the Supreme Right Heart Demon Suppressing Chi Controlling Return to Origin Manual. The process of refinement is quite wonderful. Under the washing of the technique's chant, the negative attributes like coldness and brutality in those gray-black auras were stripped away layer by layer, eventually turning into a wisp of pure heaven and earth spiritual energy. Shui Yan introduced this wisp of spiritual energy along with other spiritual energies absorbed into the body into his dantian. In that instant, the dantian was no longer empty, and wisps of spiritual power sat quietly within it. According to the description of the first level of the Supreme Right Heart Demon Suppressing Chi Controlling Return to Origin Manual, this meant he had stepped into the first level of Chi refining. Shui Yan knew he would break through quickly. After all, he had such a physique as the five-element spirit body, and a complete technique infused by the system. If he were still as stumbling and difficult to cultivate as a mortal, wouldn't this cheat be wasted? But he didn't expect it to be this fast. Shui Yan had heard along the way that for those with mediocre aptitude, from first sitting in meditation to truly stepping into the first level of Chi refining, it takes at least 100 days. And him, from sitting cross-legged until now, counting it up, it has been less than half an hour. Half an hour, from a mortal with no cultivation, to a cultivator at the first level of Chi refining. If this speed were known, the entire Wuji immortal sect would probably explode. You must know, the first threshold of the path of cultivation is refining Chi into the dantian. For most people, this pass is an insurmountable wall. The night passed without incident. The next morning, as the sky began to brighten, Shui Yan got up and washed. He simply ate some dry rations from the kitchen, and pushed the door out, walking along the mountain path toward the peak. The mountain path of the demon-suppressing peak was built quite regularly, paved with bluestone, and although there were no plants or trees on both sides, it was clean and tidy. Shui Yan walked for about half an hour, before seeing a great hall standing on the peak. Demon-suppressing hall was written on the hall plaque. The brushwork was vigorous, exuding a sense of killing intent. The hall door was not closed. Shui Yan stood still outside the door, and bowed. Disciple Shui Yan seeks an audience with Master. There was no response from inside the hall. Shui Yan looked up and saw Peak Master Xian Qing sitting cross-legged on the mat in the hall, with spiritual light circulating around her body, clearly in the middle of cultivation. He dared not disturb her, so he waited outside the door, about the time it takes to burn a stick of incense. The spiritual light around Peak Master Xian Qing gradually subsided, and she slowly opened her eyes. She looked at Shui Yan standing outside the door, her gaze lingering on his face for a moment, nodding slightly. Come in. Shui Yan entered the hall according to her words, walked to the front, and bowed and saluted again. Peak Master Xian Qing looked him over, her expression even showing a rare trace of relief. You stayed on the peak for a night, and didn't run away in the middle of the night. Shui Yan's mouth twitched slightly. The words, run away in the middle of the night, were spoken so naturally, showing that many disciples recruited by the demon-suppressing peak in previous years must have done this. Peak Master Xian Qing continued. The first night at the demon-suppressing peak is the hardest to endure. Under the infiltration of demon energy, inner demons arise, and many disciples cannot make it until dawn, their minds crumbling, crying and shouting that they want to go down the mountain. You were able to hold on. It seems your state of mind is indeed good. Shui Yan showed a bit of humility, bowing. Master overpraises me. The disciple was just holding on hard, but deep down, he knew clearly. He knew his own situation. He was safe and sound, not because of any strength of mind, but because of the Supreme Right Heart Demon Suppressing Chi Controlling Return to Origin Manual. Demon energy. He wasn't afraid of it at all. He could even refine it, and he was now certain of one thing. The system function is indeed powerful. His master, who is at the human immortal stage, obviously did not detect his five-element spirit body, nor did she discover that he had stepped into the first level of Chi refining last night. It must be the effect of primordial formless, even able to block the prying of a human immortal. Thinking of this, Shui Yan felt even more secure. Peak Master Xian Qing stood up, brushed her robe. Come with me, take you to see the demon-suppressing cave, and then teach you the introductory mind method. Yes, Shui Yan replied, following behind Peak Master Xian Qing, out of the demon-suppressing hall, along the mountain path toward the belly of the peak. This time it wasn't the road up the mountain, but down. The path gradually narrowed, cliff walls towering on both sides, the sky compressed into a narrow slit. After walking for about 3/4 of an hour, the view ahead opened up. This is the belly of the demon-suppressing peak, but the light around it was dim, and the air was filled with a dark aura. That aura was gray and black intertwined, lingering like mist. As soon as Shui Yan stepped into this area, the five-element spirit body keenly captured the changes in the surrounding aura. The heaven and earth spiritual energy here was far denser than on the hillside, but the demon energy mixed in it was also more intense. The demon energy touching his skin felt like needle pricks, as if it could trigger the negative emotions in one's heart. If it were anyone else, they might have been shaken in mind and spirit by now. But the Supreme Right Heart Demon Suppressing Qi Controlling Return to Origin Manual in Shui Yan's body was running automatically, his spiritual platform clear and bright, and those negative emotions dispersed before they could even form. His face remained as usual, continuing to follow Peak Master Xian Qing. Peak Master Xian Qing suddenly stopped, and waved her hand. Swish! A pale golden light curtain flew out from her sleeve, wrapping Shui Yan inside. The light curtain was as thin as a cicada's wing, yet gave one a sense of being unbreakable, isolating all the gray-black auras around them. The demon energy here is extremely heavy. You haven't cultivated yet, and too much contact is a heavy burden on your physical body. This shield can keep you safe for a while. Peak Master Xian Qing's voice came from ahead, still flat. Shui Yan knew that he actually didn't need it, but naturally he couldn't say that. He immediately bowed, with a sincere face. Thank you for your care, Master. Peak Master Xian Qing said no more, and continued moving forward. Passing through that layer of gray-black mist, a massive cave appeared in front, the cave entrance about 10 zhang high, and 5 zhang wide. The cliff walls on both sides were engraved with dense array patterns. Those arrays layered one after another, connecting to each other, forming an immense ceiling array. And inside the cave entrance, visible dark energy was surging out from the depths continuously. Shui Yan stood at the entrance, and could feel the violence and malice contained within. This is the demon-suppressing cave. Peak Master Xian Qing walked into the cave. Shui Yan followed closely. The space inside the cave was far wider than what was seen from the entrance, and in the center of the cave was a massive stone platform. The stone platform was about 3 zhang high, entirely pitch black, its surface smooth like a mirror. Around the stone platform, 8 stone pillars rose from the ground, thick chains wrapped around each pillar, the ends of the chains disappearing beneath the stone platform, not knowing where they extended, and that intense demon energy was seeping out from the cracks at the bottom of the stone platform. Peak Master Xian Qing stood in front of the stone platform, looking up at this massive seal, and spoke slowly. This is the core of the demon-suppressing peak, named the demon-suppressing cave. Legend has it that in ancient times, there was a demon that caused chaos in the world, bringing catastrophe to all living things. Our Wuji immortal sect ancestors exhausted the power of the entire sect to suppress it here, and established a sealing array, using the demon-suppressing peak as the eye of the formation, to guard it for generations. The name of that demon has long been buried in the long river of time, and no one knows it today. Hearing this, Shui Yan couldn't help but ask, then, is this ancient demon really real? Peak Master Xian Qing shook her head slightly. Whether there is an ancient demon, I actually don't know either. The Wuji immortal sect has been established for over 30,000 years. 30,000 years have passed, and the demon has shown no signs of breaking the seal, nor has any sound ever been heard from it. Some speculate that the demon perished long ago in the long process of being sealed, and that what remains now is merely residual demon energy. Others believe that the demon is still sleeping beneath the seal, not knowing when it will wake up. But regardless, this demon energy is tangibly real. It constantly seeps out from the cracks in the seal, contaminating the spiritual energy of the entire mountain. This is the root cause of the difficulty in cultivating on the demon-suppressing peak. Shui Yan nodded thoughtfully. In other words, even Peak Master Xian Qing herself is unsure if there is anything living under the seal. This is quite interesting. 30,000 years of sealing. If it were him as that demon, he would have suffocated to death long ago. Peak Master Xian Qing turned to look at Shui Yan. Alright, you have seen the cave. It is time to pass on your introductory cultivation method. She raised her right hand, and tapped her index finger lightly on the center of Shui Yan's eyebrows, where her fingertips touched. A warm and gentle power seeped into his mind. The next moment, countless pieces of information surged into Shui Yan's consciousness like a tide. Shui Yan closed his eyes to focus, quietly digesting this information. A moment later, he had his own judgment. What Peak Master Xian Qing passed to him consisted of 2 parts. The first, called the demon-suppressing right heart art, is a foundation technique, aimed at stabilizing the mind and spirit, and resisting demon energy infiltration. It is the fundamental practice for disciples of the demon-suppressing peak. But Shui Yan only skimmed through it once, and discovered that this technique had some similarities to the Supreme Right Heart Demon-Suppressing Qi Controlling Return to Origin manual he obtained last night. Whether it was the mental chants or the circulation paths, they seem to have been passed down from the same source. However, this demon-suppressing right heart art was incomplete. It wasn't just missing key chants. The circulation paths were also severed. The entire manual was like a scroll that had been mostly torn away. The barely pieced together parts were nothing more than skin deep. As for the effect, Shui Yan shook his head secretly. Using this incomplete technique to resist demon energy would likely be like trying to put out a cartload of burning firewood with a single cup of water. It is no wonder that generations of demon-suppressing peak disciples were tortured to the point of misery. The second, called the demon-suppressing seal, is a spell. It uses spiritual power to condense into a seal, capable of suppressing evil spirits and sealing demon energy. It has a strong restraining effect on the demon race. Shui Yan carefully realized its essence, feeling that this spell was actually quite good. Although with his current first level of qi refining cultivation, he couldn't unleash its true power at all. This method was exquisite. As his cultivation improved, the variations he could perform would increase. It is a practical spell that can be used up to high realms. He opened his eyes, just about to speak, when Peak Master Xian Qing's voice already sounded. Ordinary disciples joining the sect only cultivate the foundation establishment techniques common to all peaks. But the demon-suppressing right heart art I have passed to you is the foundation technique passed down through generations of the Wuji immortal sect's demon-suppressing line. Remember, this technique must not be spread externally. I will state the ugly truth first. The demon-suppressing peak is not like other places. If one day you feel that this place is too hard and want to leave, I will not stop you. But there is one condition. At that time, I will personally cripple your cultivation and erase all your memories of the demon-suppressing right heart art. This is the rule of the demon-suppressing peak, and it has been so since ancient times. Peak Master Xian Qing paused, looking straight into Shui Yan's eyes. So, it is not too late for you to regret it now. If you want to leave, I will not blame you, acting as if I had never seen you yesterday. But once you nod, there will be no room for regret in the future. Shui Yan heard this, his expression unchanged, and just as he was about to speak, a fate choice was triggered. The host is facing a critical choice for joining the demon-suppressing peak. This action will determine the host's future path. Choice 1. A gentleman does not stand under a dangerous wall. The environment of the demon-suppressing peak is harsh, the technique is incomplete, and the future is bleak. Why waste time here? Since the host possesses the 5 elements spirit body, with superb natural talent, where in the immortal world can you not go? Immediately express your intention to leave to Peak Master Xian Qing, go down the mountain, and join another peak. With the host's aptitude, why worry about not having a better place to go? Reward, top grade spirit pill. 1. 9-turn soul returning pill. This pill comes from an ancient recipe, refined with 99 kinds of heaven-sent treasures, reaching 9 turns. It has the effect of bringing the dead back to life. For those whose physical body has not decayed and soul has not scattered, taking it can regrow flesh and bone, revive the dead, and renew the cultivation path. Even human immortal cultivators covet this pill. Choice 2. Since I have entered the demon-suppressing peak, I am a person of the demon-suppressing peak. Forget about the demon energy infiltration. Forget about the incomplete technique. I will forge ahead without hesitation, never looking back. The host's mind is made up. Express your determination to Peak Master Xian Qing, to be loyal from beginning to end, with no regrets in this life. Reward, supernatural ability, selfless and formless body. Supernatural ability, selfless and formless body. This is a supreme life-saving ability created by an ancient powerhouse. After cultivation, one can condense a selfless and formless avatar. The main body can be stored within the avatar, with the avatar carrying the soul and consciousness. The two become one, inseparable. All sensations and perceptions received by the avatar are the same as the main body, acting freely and controlling without obstruction. If the avatar suffers fatal damage and is destroyed, the main body's soul and physical body remain unharmed, and one can hide and lurk at the place where the avatar fell, or appear immediately. After the avatar is destroyed, one can consume one's own soul power to recondense it. Reshaping it takes 49 days. The avatar's form can be changed as one pleases. Tall, short, fat, thin, man, woman, old, young, human or strange forms can all be changed at will. Shui Yan finished reading the 2 options, almost without any hesitation. The 9-turn soul returning pill from choice 1 is indeed precious. Bring the dead back to life. Who wouldn't want that? But that is just a one-time item. Moreover, he is living well right now. What does he need a soul returning pill for? Is he hoping to die early? As for the supernatural ability from choice 2, the selfless and formless body, Shui Yan's eyelids twitched slightly. Isn't this a substitute technique that comes with a resurrection armor? And it is the top-tier substitute where the main body is fine if it dies, and the avatar can be remolded. What is even more outrageous is that it can change form and appearance at will. This is simply an essential divine skill for walking in the Jianghu, slacking off and running away. One life becomes 2 lives become countless. As long as his soul can hold out, he can extend his life infinitely. This is not a supernatural ability. This is clearly a no-death cheat. Shui Yan silently gave the system a thumbs up in his heart. Then with a thought, he chose choice 2. Choice confirmed. Reward being distributed. Congratulations to the host for obtaining supernatural ability, selfless and formless body. A profound power surged into the depths of Shui Yan's soul, as if a seed had been planted in his soul, slowly taking root and sprouting. Shui Yan knew this was the foundation of the selfless and formless body. In the future, only by nurturing it with soul power could he condense that substitute avatar. He withdrew his thoughts, raised his head, and met Peak Master Xian Qing's searching gaze. Shui Yan took a deep breath, his expression solemn. From the moment the disciple stepped onto the demon-suppressing peak, I was already prepared for everything. No matter how many dangers and thorns lie on the path ahead, I will never retreat. In this life, I will never have even half a regret for the choice made today. His voice was resonant, echoing in the hollow cave. Peak Master Xian Qing watched Shui Yan quietly for a moment. After a long time, she nodded slightly. Good. Since that is the case, from today on, you are officially a disciple of my demon-suppressing peak. Disciple Shui Yan pays respects to master. Disciple Shui Yan pays respects to master. Shui Yan bowed, but secretly thought to himself, if his system had a favorability prompt, pumped. He might be able to see his master's favorability toward him rising rapidly right now. Forget about whether he can do it in the future. Who wouldn't be comfortable hearing such pleasant words? Peak Master Xian Qing stood with her hands behind her back, looking at the surging demon energy in the depths of the cave, and spoke. Although the demon-suppressing peak has a harsh environment, it is not without its advantages. If you can maintain yourself against demon energy infiltration with the cultivation technique, cultivating here is actually beneficial. The spiritual energy on other peaks is pure, but its concentration is limited. While the spiritual energy on the demon-suppressing peak is mixed with demon energy, its concentration is far superior to other places. This is because the demon energy seeping from the seal merges with the heaven and earth spiritual energy, making the spiritual energy here even denser. Shui Yan heard this, and understood in his heart. This is like those mines in his previous life. Having impurities in the ore is certainly troublesome, but if one can solve the problem of impurities, it is a high-grade mine. Peak Master Xian Qing continued. If you can withstand it, you can cultivate directly inside the demon-suppressing cave. The cultivation speed will be even faster. The concentration of spiritual energy in the cave is several times higher than anywhere else on the peak, but that also inevitably means enduring more intense demon energy infiltration. The slightest carelessness will lead to chi deviation. I say these things only to inform you of the pros and cons, not to ask you to take risks. You have just obtained the cultivation method with an unstable foundation. You must not try it easily. Wait until your cultivation improves in the future, and you reach the spirit severing realm. Perhaps you can try. Shui Yan nodded, acknowledging the instruction. Spirit severing? That is still a long way off. He is currently only at the first level of chi refining, unknown how many mountains away from spirit severing. Peak Master Xian Qing added. Let's talk about the responsibilities of demon-suppressing peak disciples. Disciples of other peaks must complete various tasks assigned by the sect, either going down the mountain for training, managing halls, or participating in sect affairs. But my demon-suppressing peak is different. You only need to do one thing. Stay on the demon-suppressing peak and cultivate. Shui Yan was slightly startled. Nothing else to do? Nothing else to do. Peak Master Xian Qing said calmly. The meaning of the demon-suppressing peak's existence is to maintain the stability of the seal. Disciples cultivating here, with their own aura resonating with the mountain, are reinforcing the seal. The higher your cultivation, the greater the benefit to the seal. Therefore, cultivation is your only responsibility. Shui Yan bowed again. The disciple will keep Master's teachings in mind. That night, the moon was bright and the stars were sparse. Shui Yan returned to the courtyard on the mountainside, closed the courtyard door, and sat cross-legged on the bed. He didn't hurry to sleep, but closed his eyes and concentrated, starting to run his cultivation technique. On the surface, he was practicing the demon-suppressing right heart art passed down by Peak Master Xian Qing today. But what he was actually running was the Supreme Right Heart Demon-Suppressing Chi Controlling Return to Origin Manual. The two techniques were of the same origin but different streams. The former was incomplete, the latter was complete. Although the circulation paths were similar, the effects were worlds apart. While running the technique to absorb spiritual energy, Shui Yan diverted some focus to practice that spell. Demon-Suppressing Seal. This seal was not complicated. Its method of casting was to use specific hand gestures to trigger the spiritual power within the body, making it flow along predetermined meridian paths, eventually condensing into a spell seal in the palm. There were 9 variations in the hand gestures, each corresponding to a different method of spiritual power circulation. The path of spiritual power circulation passed through the hand's 3 yin and 3 yang meridians, converging at the Laogong point in the palm, and then activated with a chant, to become the seal of demon suppression. For ordinary people practicing this kind of spell, the most difficult part was controlling the circulation of spiritual power in the body. Spiritual power is like water. Meridians are like canals. The slightest carelessness would cause it to go astray. Lightly, the spell would not form. Heavily, the meridians would be damaged. It usually required hundreds or thousands of practices before the spiritual power could be circulated as easily as one's own arm. But Shui Yan was different. The 5-element spirit body's affinity for spiritual power reached an alarming level. As soon as his thought moved, the spiritual power acted like an obedient servant, flowing gently along the predetermined path. No more, no less. Not fast, not slow, just right. In less than half an hour, Shui Yan was already able to barely condense the first demon-suppressing seal. Although its power was infinitesimal, being able to cast it was already a great improvement. Shui Yan was just about to continue consolidating it, when the familiar golden text suddenly appeared before his eyes. Fate choice triggered. Detected that the host has mastered the foundation technique and spell of the demon-suppressing peak, and that the 5-element spirit body has extreme affinity for spiritual energy. The spiritual energy concentration in the demon-suppressing cave is far higher than anywhere else on the peak. If one can enter to cultivate, the cultivation speed will increase significantly. Choice 1. Seek wealth in danger. The path of cultivation is to act against heaven. How can one achieve great things while being timid? Immediately head to the demon-suppressing cave. Use the dense spiritual energy and demon energy to temper yourself, and improve your cultivation at the fastest speed. Reward. Top-grade Dharma artifact. Demon-suppressing jade pendant. This jade pendant is refined from the leftovers of spiritual stones around the sealing stone platform. Wearing it on one's body can slightly resist demon demon energy infiltration and has certain benefits for cultivation. Choice 2. A gentleman does not tread on dangerous ground. The path of cultivation is long and distant. Do not fight for a single day or a single moment. It is better to be safe and steady. Continue cultivating step by step in the hillside courtyard, and only plan for the cave matter after your cultivation is sufficiently profound. Reward: Enlightenment and Profound Insight Pill Pseudo. After taking this pill, one can enter the state of enlightenment and profound insight for a period of time. In this state, heaven and earth spiritual energy will converge on the body automatically. No need for active absorption, and cultivation speed will skyrocket tenfold. At the same time, insight will also be greatly improved, and techniques and spells will be understood instantly. This pill's effect lasts for 6 hours. After the effect ends, a portion of the improvement in insight will be permanently retained. Shui Yan carefully finished reading the 2 options, meditating briefly. The reward for choice 1 is the demon-suppressing jade pendant, a top-grade Dharma artifact. Although Dharma artifacts are the lowest-level items in the cultivation world, they are already rare treasures for chi-refining cultivators. However, he thought again, this jade pendant can only slightly resist demon energy, and its benefit to cultivation is limited. More importantly, there is the condition of going to the demon-suppressing cave. Shui Yan couldn't help but shake his head. First of all, his master is a human immortal stage figure. As a disciple who just joined yesterday, why would he run off to the demon-suppressing cave in the middle of the night? Although master said he could cultivate there, being so eager, it is hard to guarantee that it wouldn't raise suspicions. What if master thinks he has some unspeakable agenda, suspecting he is an undercover agent sent by another sect, intending to sneak into the cave to destroy the seal, and release the demon? Shui Yan shivered. Soul search technique. Take note. By then, never mind the 5 elements spirit body, even 10 heads wouldn't be enough for them to search. Secondly, the reward for choice 1 is only a Dharma artifact, while the reward for choice 2 is a pill that can increase cultivation speed and insight. Although it is just a pseudo pill, its effect description is simply heaven-defying. Tenfold cultivation speed, plus permanent improvement in insight. No matter how you look at it, it is far more practical than a Dharma artifact. Shui Yan muttered in his heart. System: I choose choice 2. Choice confirmed. Reward being distributed. Congratulations to the host for obtaining Enlightenment and Profound Insight Pill Pseudo. A pill appeared out of thin air in front of Shui Yan. The pill was crystal clear, the size of a long gun, emitting a golden halo. Shui Yan reached out to catch it. Without hesitation, opened his mouth and took the pill. The moment the pill entered his stomach, a feeling of coolness rose from his dantian, rushing straight to the top of his head. The next moment, Shui Yan's consciousness seemed to leave his body, and entered a profound state. Heaven and earth in all directions, east, south, west, north, center, within the 6 directions, all were within his perception. The endless starry sky spread out above his head, stars twinkling, dazzling and eye-catching, the birth and death of all things, the flourishing and withering of plants, the rotation of the 4 seasons, all appeared before his eyes one by one. It was also as if he saw the chaos when heaven and earth first opened, the clear energy rising to become heaven, the turbid energy sinking to become earth, and all things born therefrom. Shui Yan was filled with shock in his heart. This feeling was as if he had merged with this piece of heaven and earth. Following the changes of heaven and earth, Shui Yan clearly perceived all the spiritual energy between heaven and earth, beginning to converge with him at the center. Gold, wood, water, fire, earth, the 5 elements spiritual energy, as well as lightning, ice, wind, and other spiritual energies, even some extremely rare special spiritual energies whose names he didn't know. Countless spiritual energies rushed from all directions, like 100 rivers returning to the sea, like stars surrounding the moon. He was like the center of a vortex, absorbing all of this into his body. At this moment, Shui Yan had a wonderful feeling. His breathing was the breathing of heaven and earth. His circulation of cultivation was the rotation of the earth's day and night, the cycle of life and death of all things. Spiritual energy flowed into the meridians endlessly, without needing him to actively guide it. It automatically circulated according to the path of the Supreme Right Heart Demon Suppressing Chi Controlling Return to Origin Manual, washing the meridians and dantian over and over again. Shui Yan immersed himself in this state, forgetting the passage of time. He didn't know how long it had been, but when he felt his mind and spirit were full, and could no longer hold more insights, he slowly opened his eyes. Outside the window, the sky was brightening. An entire night had passed. Shui Yan looked down at his hands, and closed his eyes to perceive the situation in his body. He could clearly feel the changes in his body. A strong stream of chi moved through his limbs and bones. His 8 extraordinary meridians, thicker than last night. He didn't know how many times. Shui Yan had a thought, perceiving his own cultivation. The next moment, he froze. Foundation establishment, 9th level perfection, just 1 step away from golden core. Shui Yan widened his eyes. One night, just one night, he had crossed from being a small cultivator just entering the 1st level of chi refining, across the entire chi refining period. Arriving at Foundation Establishment 9th level perfection. Just one line away from Golden Core. What concept is this? Although Shui Yan had just entered the cultivation world, he knew the basic common sense of cultivation. Even for a genius with a heaven spirit root, it takes about 3 days from the first qi refining into the body to stabilizing at the first level of qi refining. Then, from the first level of qi refining to the 9th level perfection, even with excellent aptitude and sufficient resources, it would take several years of time. Going further, impacting Foundation Establishment, not to mention success or failure, just the cultivation after Foundation Establishment. Each level requires a huge amount of time. An ordinary heaven spirit root cultivator, from entry to Foundation Establishment perfection, takes at least 20 or 30 years. But him, Shui Yan took a deep breath, trying hard to calm himself down. What level of pill is this? Enlightenment and profound insight pill. Even the pseudo version is this fierce, he whispered to himself, his tone full of disbelief. Shui Yan closed his eyes again to perceive, carefully experiencing the lingering rhythm left by that pill. The improvement in insight was permanent. He could clearly feel. His thinking was sharper than yesterday, and his understanding of the techniques was also deeper. But that effect of creating something from nothing, with spiritual energy converging automatically, had dissipated without a trace. If he wanted to continue improving his cultivation, he could only honestly absorb spiritual energy, accumulating it day by day. However, Shui Yan was already very satisfied. From the first level of qi refining to Foundation Establishment 9th level perfection, this saved him at least 20 or 30 years of hard cultivation, and he also gained a wave of insight for free. This reward truly came in time. The corners of Shui Yan's mouth rose slightly. He only hoped that such rewards could come a few more times. In the following days, Shui Yan cultivated with peace of mind on the demon-suppressing peak. This place was very quiet, with no one around to disturb him. Every day, he only needed to follow the steps to run his cultivation technique, accumulating spiritual power. Life was quite regular. The only thing he needed to do was to go to the demon-suppressing hall to pay respects to Peak Master Xian Qing every 10 days. It was nothing more than asking if there were any difficulties in cultivation, whether the mind and spirit were stable under demon energy infiltration, and so on. Every time Shui Yan went, he would deliberately show some signs of being infiltrated by demon energy, such as a slightly pale complexion, slightly chaotic breath, or a trace of worry between his eyebrows. Peak Master Xian Qing saw this, and would raise her hand to press on the top of his head, transferring a stream of pure spiritual power. It entered from the Baihui point, circulating around his meridians for a week, washing away the gray-black demon energy accumulated in his body. That purification method was quite mysterious. Wherever Peak Master Xian Qing's spiritual power passed, it was like a clear spring washing stones, stripping away the demon energy attached to the meridian walls bit by bit, and then discharging it from the pores. The whole process was gentle and soft, without any pain, but instead had an indescribable comfort. Shui Yan quite enjoyed this feeling. It gave him a taste of being cared for by an elder, as if he were lying in a cradle being gently rocked when he was young, like being in his mother's arms. Of course, he would never say this out loud. It would be too embarrassing. This day, Shui Yan came to the demon-suppressing hall as usual. Peak Master Xian Qing sat on the cushion, and after he performed the salute, she scanned his body with her divine sense. After a moment, she nodded slightly. First level of qi refining is stabilized, with a solid foundation. To have this speed with 3 spiritual roots, not bad. Shui Yan bowed his head. Thank you, Master, for the praise. Peak Master Xian Qing waved her hand, and a cyan cloth bag flew out from her sleeve, landing steadily in Shui Yan's hand. This is a storage bag. Inside are the pills needed for the early stage of qi refining, a total of 10 or more bottles. However, pills are good, but one must not be greedy. Taking one at a time is enough. Wait until the medicine is fully absorbed before taking the next one. If you eat too many at once, spiritual power will accumulate in the dantian, and be difficult to digest, which would be harmful instead. Shui Yan took the storage bag. Thank you, Master, for the reward. He knew that these pills were useless for his current Foundation Establishment 9th level perfection cultivation, but naturally, he showed no trace on his face, only putting on a look of gratitude. Peak Master Xian Qing said faintly, no need to thank me. You are currently the only disciple of my demon-suppressing peak. As long as you stay here with peace of mind, and do not have thoughts of leaving, the resources you should have at each stage of cultivation, I will not have you lack any. The two chatted casually for a few more sentences, mostly urging him to focus on cultivation, and not to be wasteful or lazy. Shui Yan answered them one by one, then bid farewell and left, returning to the hillside courtyard. Time passed quickly, and in a flash, a month went by. During this month, Shui Yan didn't trigger any new choice tasks. The daily homework was very simple. In addition to cultivating the Supreme Right Heart Demon Suppressing Qi Controlling Return to Origin Manual and the Demon Suppressing Seal, there was the condensing of the supernatural ability, Selfless and Formless Body. The method of condensing this supernatural ability was quite consuming to the mind. It required using soul power as a guide, to separate a wisp of one's own soul bit by bit, nurturing and shaping it, making it an independent avatar that overlapped with the main body. It was like grafting a new branch onto the soul, wait for it to take root and sprout, and it would become one with the main stem, indistinguishable from each other. This process could not be rushed. finished. It had to be done slowly. Shui Yan spent half an hour every day specifically doing this. After a full month, he had just barely finished. That night, the moon hid behind the clouds, and everything was pitch black. Shui Yan sat on the bed, first perceiving the surroundings with the system's primordial formless function. No sense of being peeked at. He nodded slightly, feeling relieved, and then closed his eyes, his mind sinking into the depths of his soul. The seed that had been planted for more than a month had now taken root and sprouted, turning into an illusory figure, closely connected to his own soul. Shui Yan took a deep breath, his thought moved, and that illusory avatar shuddered violently, stripping away from his soul, and turning into a hazy light and shadow suspended in front of him. At the same time, Shui Yan's main physical body began to change. From the ends of his limbs, bit by bit, it turned into tiny stardust. The stardust did not dissipate, but floated slowly toward that group of light and shadow, merging into it. A moment later, Shui Yan's physical body completely dissipated into the air, while that group of light and shadow shrank violently, solidified, and eventually turned into a human shape. It was exactly Shui Yan's appearance. Features, build, clothing, not a single bit off. On the bed, Shui Yan slowly opened his eyes. The avatar was him, and he was the avatar. It was just that within this avatar, there was an extra layer of things that others couldn't see. His main physical body. To be precise, the main physical body had been turned into a drop of pure origin blood, and hidden in the depths of the avatar's heart. This drop of blood was the foundation of his existence. On weekdays, the avatar carried his soul and consciousness, moving freely, no different from a real physical body. If an accident occurred, and the avatar was killed, that drop of origin blood would reform into the main physical body on the spot, safe and sound. What was even more wonderful was that, if he was accidentally beaten into ashes, the main body could also imitate the appearance of ashes, to mix in and fake death to escape. Of course, he could also wait for the enemy to relax their vigilance, and suddenly appear in peak condition. Shui Yan looked down at his hands, and clenched his fist again. Touch, force, temperature, exactly the same as before, as expected of a supernatural ability. It's just awesome, he whispered to himself, his tone full of satisfaction. Then he thought of an interesting scene. In the future, if someone were to beat him to death, they would probably have to face a second phase of him who had revived with full health. The expression on that person's face would probably be quite spectacular. The selfless and formless body was condensed. Next was the most critical thing. Shui Yan was currently just one step away from the Golden Core realm, and regarding the Golden Core matter, Shui Yan was not entirely ignorant. In the month since joining the Demon Suppressing Peak, he would go to the scripture repository next to the Demon Suppressing Hall every few days to read. The scripture repository had 9 floors, the first floor recording common sense of the cultivation world, sect history, local chronicles, etc. It didn't forbid disciples from reading. Shui Yan would find time every day to stay for an hour or two, flipping through those basic classics, and gained a rough understanding of many rules and common sense of the cultivation world. This included the matter of tribulation. The breakthrough from the Qi refining period to the foundation establishment period did not have thunder tribulation, but condensing the golden core during the foundation establishment period is a major pass. Once the golden core is condensed, the heavenly Tao will send down thunder tribulation to test the cultivator's Tao heart and physical body. If one can cross it, one's longevity will surge to around 500 years. If one cannot cross it, lightly, the golden core will shatter and cultivation will be lost. Heavily, one will be reduced to ashes and die. Moreover, this thunder tribulation cannot be hidden from, nor can it be avoided. No matter where you hide in the corners of the earth, the heavenly Tao can find you. Shui Yan thought of this, and his brows furrowed slightly. His cultivation was already at foundation establishment 9th level perfection. If he wanted to continue to break through, condensing the golden core was inevitable. But once the golden core was condensed, the thunder tribulation would arrive. He wasn't afraid of the thunder tribulation, but the problem was that he was in the Wuji immortal sect, on the demon suppressing peak, under the watchful eyes of his master. A disciple who had only joined for a month, with the aptitude of 3 spiritual roots, was suddenly going to condense a golden core? Who would believe this if it were said out loud? By then, Peak Master Xian Qing would probably search him from inside out. Just as Shui Yan was worried about this matter. Ding! Fate choice triggered. Detected that the host's cultivation has reached foundation establishment 9th level perfection, imminent to face the golden core thunder tribulation. Given the host's current environment, publicly undergoing tribulation will inevitably attract the attention of Peak Master Xian Qing and the sect. At that time, many secrets may be hard to keep. System function, primordial formless can temporarily cover the heavenly secrets, shielding the perception of heavenly Tao, so that the thunder tribulation does not arrive. However, when breaking through to human immortal and above in the future, all accumulated thunder tribulations will superimpose and descend, with power doubled. Choice 1. Leave the sect and find a hidden place to undergo tribulation. This action may attract Peak Master Xian Qing's attention and lead to her following secretly. Reward. Combat supernatural ability. Heavenly Astral Tyrant Body. Heavenly Astral Tyrant Body. A supreme combat method inherited from the ancient god of war. When activated, the physical body turns into an indestructible body, with infinite strength and invulnerability to all laws. Choice 2. Use the system function, Primordial Formless to to cover the thunder tribulation. Future matters will be dealt with in the future. Reward: 9 Dragon Heaven Swallowing Pattern. 9 Dragon Heaven Swallowing Pattern. 9 dragon patterns are imprinted on the soul. Every time one is activated, one can obtain the power of a dragon. Shuayan seriously finished reading the 2 options. Choice 1. Leaving the sect to find a place to undergo tribulation, not to mention whether he could find a hidden place. Just the fact that Peak Master Xian Qing might follow him secretly was enough for him to dispel the idea. Shuayan shook his head. System: I choose choice 2. Choice confirmed. Reward being distributed. Congratulations to the host for obtaining 9 Dragon Heaven Swallowing Pattern. Boom. A vast power surged into the depths of Shuayan's soul. 9 true dragon souls appeared out of thin air in Shuayan's soul. Each dragon lifelike, scales distinct, eyes closed, as if sleeping. Shuayan looked down at his physical body. No traces at all, the same as before. Clearly, this tattoo was not carved on the skin, but imprinted on the soul. Shuayan tried to activate the first dragon pattern. With a thought, one of the sleeping black dragons suddenly opened its eyes. A magnificent power gushed out from the depths of the soul, and instantly poured into Shuayan's limbs and bones. Shuayan only felt his blood vessels bulging all over his body, as if he could shatter a mountain with one punch, and cut a river with one palm. The momentum around him was like a dragon's roar and a tiger's whistle, chilling to the bone. A moment later, the power converged. With his current cultivation, activating 1 dragon pattern was the limit. Shuayan continued to sit cross-legged on the bed, closing his eyes to focus. The chant of the 3rd level of the Supreme Right Heart Demon Suppressing Chi Controlling Return to Origin Manual flowed slowly in his heart. This level, named Condensing the Core, was to continuously compress and purify the full spiritual power in the Dantian, until it became substantial, condensing into a golden core. Ordinary cultivators condensing the core need to use great willpower to repeatedly squeeze spiritual power. The slightest carelessness would lead to wild spiritual power, and severed meridians. But Shuayan was different. The 5 elements spirit body's control over spiritual power could be called abnormal. Where the thought went, the spiritual power followed like an arm. In the Dantian, that thick mass of spiritual power began to rotate slowly. At first it was slow, like a millstone grinding grain. Gradually, the rotation speed became faster and faster. The spiritual power was thrown to the periphery by centrifugal force, and a core gradually opened up in the center. Following the guidance of the technique, Shuayan compressed the outer spiritual power layer by layer toward the core. The spiritual power became increasingly solid, gradually solidifying from liquid. In the Dantian, a pill slowly took shape, but it was not the pure gold color of ordinary cultivators, but gold, cyan, blue, red, yellow, 5 colors intertwined, flowing endlessly on the surface of the pill, like sunlight reflecting, beautiful to behold. This was the golden core condensed by the 5 elements spirit body. All 5 elements were present, mutually generating and completing each other. The spiritual power recovery speed was far superior to ordinary people. Shuayan perceived the 5-colored golden core in his body, understanding in his heart. As long as he didn't exhaust his spiritual power in one breath, his spiritual power would almost never be exhausted. Outside the small courtyard, the wind was calm and the waves were quiet. There were no gathering clouds of tribulation, no rumbling thunder, not even a trace of strange phenomena. Shuayan just like this, quietly, stepped from foundation establishment 9th level perfection, into the 1st level of the golden core. As for that thunder tribulation that should have descended, it would be settled altogether in the future when he became an immortal. Shuayan was not worried. As the saying goes, without growth in the early stages, how can one be invincible in the later stages? When the cart reaches the mountain, there will be a road. Live well for now. In the following days, Shuayan did not take a single step out of the courtyard. Every day, he would run his cultivation technique, stabilizing his early golden core cultivation, and digesting the skyrocketing power bit by bit. On the 6th day, his cultivation was completely stabilized. This day was the day to pay respects to master every 10 days. Shuayan tidied up simply, and walked along the mountain path toward the peak. Entering the demon-suppressing hall, Shuayan saluted Peak Master Xian Qing, and as usual, bowed his head. Master, these past few days, my mind has been slightly restless, as if caused by demon energy infiltration. He had been acting this scene for 2 months, and was already very skilled. Peak Master Xian Qing nodded slightly, raising her hand to press on the top of his head. A stream of warm spiritual power was transferred into his body, circulating around his meridians for a week. Shuayan felt secretly comfortable. That stream of spiritual power was like warm water washing away, taking away the non-existent demon energy in the meridians, and leaving behind bursts of warmth. Peak Master Xian Qing's spiritual power circled once in Shuayan's body, and suddenly froze slightly. She perceived that Shuayan's meridians seemed to be stronger than before, with more toughness and a slightly expanded width. This is not common in disciples who have just entered Qi refining. She carefully investigated for a while, but Shuayan's cultivation was still early Qi refining, with no abnormalities. Peak Master Xian Qing frowned slightly, but immediately relaxed. She attributed all of this to her disciple's special physique. She withdrew her palm, and said faintly, "The mind is clean, no harm." Shuayan bowed. "Thank you, Master." Peak Master Xian Qing looked at him. "You have been in the sect for more than 2 months, and and your cultivation has stabilized at early Qi refining. It is time to learn some spells. I have opened the permissions for the second floor of the scripture repository for you. The second floor records some basic spells, such as sword control, fireball, windwalk, and so on. First browse through them yourself. If there is anything you don't understand, then come and ask. Shui Yan heard this, and was very happy in his heart. These days he had been reading miscellaneous books on the first floor of the scripture repository, and had already yearned for the spells on the second floor. Yes, the disciple will go now. He bowed to take his leave, turned around and walked out of the demon-suppressing hall, heading straight for the scripture repository to the side. The scripture repository had 9 floors, towering majestically on the east side of the demon-suppressing hall. Shui Yan stepped into the pavilion, and went directly to the second floor. The second floor was smaller than the first, with wooden shelves set against all 4 walls, and various jade slips and books displayed on the shelves. The materials were all of extraordinary quality. As long as one didn't intentionally tear them, these classics would not be damaged. Shui Yan casually picked up a jade slip, pressed it against his forehead, and a key to the sword control technique surged into his mind. Sword control technique, using spiritual power to pilot a flying sword, to attack enemies from a distance, is the most basic combat method in the cultivation world. Shui Yan read it once, and had already memorized it. He then picked up other jade slips: fireball technique, windwalk technique, earth wall technique, water healing technique, gold armor technique. Shui Yan was thirsty and hungry, constantly browsing through them. Although these things were not profound supernatural abilities, they were the basic skills for a cultivator walking in the world. When he read novels in his previous life, he always felt that the protagonist should learn those world-destroying ultimate moves. But only after truly entering this profession did he understand that basics are the foundation. If a fireball technique is used well, it can still burn a golden core cultivator to death. Once Shui Yan started looking, he became completely immersed in it. He read during the day, and read at night too. Every spell on the second floor. He didn't let a single jade slip go, studying them one by one, and memorizing them one by one. Time flew by. By the 10th day, Shui Yan was holding a jade slip explaining spiritual power projection and was deeply engrossed in reading, when a cold voice suddenly came from outside the door. Come out. It was Peak Master Xian Qing. Shui Yan was slightly startled, then put down the jade slip, got up and went downstairs, and left the scripture repository. Peak Master Xian Qing stood with her hands behind her back at the bottom of the steps. I let you come to the scripture repository to broaden your horizons, not for you to live here. You must know that cultivation is the foundation. No matter how many spells you learn, if your cultivation doesn't keep up, it's all in vain. The second floor is open to you. There will be plenty of time to read in the future. No need to rush for a moment. Shui Yan scratched his head, not daring to refute. Master's teaching is correct. Peak Master Xian Qing nodded slightly, turned around and walked toward the demon-suppressing hall. Shui Yan followed behind. Entering the hall, as usual, Peak Master Xian Qing purified his mind and spirit again. When she withdrew her palm, she didn't let Shui Yan leave as she usually did. Shui Yan, the disciple is here. I have observed you for these 2 months, and found that your physique is indeed somewhat special. Others who first arrive at the demon-suppressing peak take at least half a year to barely adapt to the demon energy environment, while you, in just 2 months, have already significantly reduced the degree of mental disturbance. Shui Yan laughed secretly in his heart. Actually, there was no disturbance at all. It was all an act. Outwardly, however, he said respectfully, perhaps the disciple is just a bit luckier. Peak Master Xian Qing shook her head. Luck is empty. Physique is real. Since you have already adapted to the environment of the demon-suppressing peak, there is no need to come once every 10 days in the future. Change it to once every 60 days. If you feel restless in between and cannot hold out for 60 days, then come on your own. No need to be rigid. Shui Yan bowed, saying respectfully, the disciple will strictly follow Master's orders. There is one more thing. Please speak, Master. Tomorrow is the day for outstanding disciples of each peak of the Wuji immortal sect to receive their reward magical treasures. Remember to go to the main peak, and bring back the share for the demon-suppressing peak. Shui Yan was stunned. Outstanding disciple? Peak Master Xian Qing looked at him, and there was even a hint of a smile at the corner of her mouth. The demon-suppressing peak only has you as a disciple. If you are not outstanding, who is? Do you expect me to go and receive it myself? Shui Yan was choked by these words, and thought, it seems, there is logic in that. The entire demon-suppressing peak has only 2 people from top to bottom. Master is the peak master, and cannot be counted as a disciple. Then, besides him, who else could the outstanding disciple be? One couldn't count on that ancient demon under the seal crawling up to receive it, could they? Shui Yan bowed and said, the disciple understands. I will go to the main peak early tomorrow morning. Peak Master Xian Qing nodded slightly, and waved her hand. Shui Yan understood, bowed and retreated. Exiting the demon-suppressing hall, he walked down the mountain path, calculating tomorrow's matters in his heart. The main peak. He had only been there once on the day he entered the sect. At that time, time, he was still a mortal, standing in the crowd waiting for the assignment of fate. Now that 2 months had passed, he was already a golden core cultivator. Although his cultivation was hidden very tightly, and on the surface, he was still a little transparent at the first level of qi refining. But Shui Yan was in a good mood. Going to the main peak tomorrow, it would be a good chance to see what the outstanding disciples of other peaks were like. The next day, as the sky began to brighten, Shui Yan got up and washed. This was his first time leaving the demon-suppressing peak since joining the sect. He didn't go out usually, firstly, because there was no need, and secondly, because Peak Master Xian Qing didn't give orders, so he didn't dare to run around casually, in case Master thought he was running away, and caused a misunderstanding. That wouldn't be good. Now that he had received instructions, he would have to take a good stroll outside. Shui Yan left the courtyard, and went down along the mountain path. The foot of the demon-suppressing peak did not connect with the other 9 peaks, so he had to go down to the bottom of the mountain first, and then take the detoured mountain road. Before he could head to the main peak, he walked all the way, quite leisurely. The Wuji Immortal Sect had 10 peaks in total, each with its own strengths, and the main peak was not any one specific peak, but an independent core location. However, the main peak was not highly regarded just because it was the core location, because most of the sect's affairs were concentrated here, such as task distribution, resource allocation, disciple assessments, and receiving external guests, all of which were conducted here. When Shui Yan first arrived, and was brought to the Wuji Immortal Sect, it was in the square at the foot of the main peak that he waited to be assigned. On that day, when each peak came to pick people, it was in that square that he chose the demon-suppressing peak. Coming again now, his state of mind had changed completely. Shui Yan walked while pondering the Wuji Immortal Sect system. He had read quite a few miscellaneous books in the scripture repository these days, and had gained some understanding of the sect situation. The Wuji Immortal Sect had no division between inner and outer sects, unlike the Xianxia novels he read in his previous life, where newcomers first entered as outer disciples, enduring seniority, fighting through assessments, and then stepping into the inner sect step by step, to become true disciples. Within the Wuji Immortal Sect, at most, they only set up servant disciples, responsible for miscellaneous duties of each peak, such as guarding the mountain, sweeping, and watching over herb fields and other rough work. But the demon-suppressing peak was in a special situation, and had never set up positions for servant disciples. Once you stepped onto this peak, you were directly counted as an official disciple of the peak. Of course, there were indeed gaps in strength, resources, and heritage between the peaks, but this gap was divided by peak, not by disciple status. Shui Yan thought this system was not bad. After walking for more than half an hour, Shui Yan finally stepped onto the main peak's mountain path. On both sides of the mountain path were green pines and cypresses, with clouds and mist swirling. Looking up, blue smoke curled and rose, and auspicious clouds dropped from the sky, like silk and ribbons, shrouding the entire peak in harmony. From afar came the cries of cranes, clear and long. It was truly like a fairyland. Shui Yan took a deep breath, and continued to climb up. The main hall of the main peak was named Wuji Hall. The square in front of the hall was incomparably wide, capable of holding tens of thousands of people standing side by side. When Shui Yan reached the front of the hall, about 40 or 50 people had already gathered in the square. The crowd was scattered in groups of 2 or 3, either talking in low voices, or resting with their eyes closed. These people were the outstanding disciples of each peak. Shui Yan sensed them roughly, and among these people, the lowest was at the foundation establishment level, and a few even had thick auras, vaguely touching the threshold of the golden core. And him, on the surface, he was at the first level of qi refining, standing among these people, somewhat conspicuous. But Shui Yan didn't care. He silently walked to the very back, and found a corner to stand still. But when the time came, Shui Yan could no longer stand casually at the end of the crowd to watch as before. Disciples of each peak, return to your respective areas immediately. An old and thick voice came from in front of the hall. Shui Yan looked in the direction of the voice, and saw on the steps in front of the hall, stood an old man. The old man wore a grey Taoist robe. His hair and beard were all white. His face was thin and refined, but his eyes were bright as torches. As his voice fell, 10 array platforms suddenly appeared in the square, then lined up in sequence. Each array platform was entirely built of bluestone, with the names of each peak engraved on the edges. There was no distinction between high and low in the order of the array platforms. They were just lined up in a row according to sect tradition. The disciples of each peak walked toward their own array platforms, and stood still. Shui Yan took a step, and a few low conversations reached his ears. I wonder if anyone will come from the demon-suppressing peak this time. The speaker was a disciple in the Heavenly Sword Peak area, with sword-like eyebrows and star-like eyes, his temperament sharp. One beside him took up the conversation. I heard that this batch of the demon-suppressing peak recruited a disciple. I don't know if he can endure such a special environment. The Wuji Immortal Sect counted a batch every 10 years, collecting disciples collectively. Of course, if an elder took a fancy to a good seed on a normal day, they would accept them if they wanted to, not restricted by this. Shui Yan was a disciple who entered in the most recent batch. Normally, it wouldn't be his turn to be an outstanding disciple of this batch, but the demon-suppressing peak currently only had him as a disciple, so this title of outstanding disciple could only fall on his head. To put it bluntly, It was taking advantage of the fact that the demon-suppressing peak had few people. At this moment, another disciple said, "If he comes, the magical treasures he can get won't be few. The demon-suppressing peak has had no one for several years, and the accumulated share must be extremely high. That is if he can manage to get them." Another person laughed, wanting to take them all. Is not such a simple matter. Shui Yan heard the discussions around him, but his expression did not change at all, continuing to walk toward the demon-suppressing peak's array platform. When he stood still, the square was suddenly silent for a moment, and then bursts of low sneers erupted. "He is actually only at the first level of chi refining? Did I see it wrong?" Some secretly despised him, while others offered advice. He should be the demon-suppressing peak disciple who entered this batch. Everyone is a senior brother or sister. Why compare yourself to a junior? The speaker was a female disciple in the Danxia Peak area. Once she said this, a few people nodded slightly, restraining their sneers, but others were unimpressed. Humph. Mingling among a group of Foundation establishment cultivators. I'm afraid he feels embarrassed enough already. Shui Yan heard this, but his state of mind had no ups and downs at all. They were just a few verbal taunts, and wouldn't hurt his life, so it counted for nothing. He was not like a certain god king with narrow-mindedness, who would keep it in mind at every turn, thinking that the person was already doomed to die or something. Besides, his real cultivation was golden core. If one really had to compare with these people, he was still among the very best. It was just that the truth was not convenient to be told to others. On the steps in front of the hall, the gray-robed old man scanned the audience. Seeing that the disciples of each peak were in their places, he said, "Since everyone is here, then act according to the rules. On each peak's array platform, there are several magical treasures. The lowest level is also a high-grade magical treasure. How many you can take depends on whether you can get the approval of the magical treasure." Shui Yan heard this, and his heart moved. Dharma artifacts were just things used by chi refining and Foundation establishment cultivators, but magical treasures were enough to let Foundation establishment and golden core cultivators use them all the way to the spirit-severing realm without showing weakness. It can be said that a handy magical treasure is the reliance for a cultivator's future hundreds of years. Shui Yan looked at the demon-suppressing peaks array platform. There were 19 magical treasures of various kinds placed on the platform. The array platforms of other peaks had at most 7 or 8, or at most 10 or so magical treasures. Only the demon-suppressing peak had 19, all because no one had come to receive them for years. The shares accumulated over the years. Just as Shui Yan was thinking about how to obtain the approval of the magical treasures, the array platform beside him already had movement. The disciple with sword-like eyebrows and star-like eyes from the heavenly sword peak walked slowly to the front of the platform, raised his hand to cover one of the magical treasures, and activated his spiritual power. The gourd-type magical treasure trembled slightly for a moment, let out a clear cry, and flew directly into his palm. Seeing this, Shui Yan immediately understood the trick. So-called approval is to use spiritual power to wake up the spirituality of the magical treasure, and reach a master recognition connection. If the compatibility is high enough, the magical treasure will actively submit. If the auras are incompatible with each other, there will be no response. The steps looked simple, but in reality, it tested the match between one's spiritual power characteristics and the magical treasure. Not long after, disciples of each peak took turns trying to conquer the magical treasures. Some conquered them smoothly upon the first try, showing joy on their faces, while others hit walls repeatedly, trying many pieces in a row without being able to get the magical treasure to recognize them as master, and could not help but feel dejected. Shui Yan looked around, and found that not many people could take 3 magical treasures, and those who could get 5 were extremely rare. Even though there were still many magical treasures left on the array platforms, no one could ever get the 6th one. Shui Yan did not plan to wait until everyone had finished picking the magical treasures before making a move, so as to avoid attracting too much attention for no reason. The moment he acted, ding, fate choice triggered. The host possesses the 5 elements spirit body, and your true cultivation has reached the golden core realm. The 19 magical treasures on the demon-suppressing peaks array platform. With your aptitude, taking them all is not a difficult task. Choice 1. Show your extraordinary nature, and take all 19 magical treasures in one fell swoop. Shaking the Wuji immortal sect. Reward. Realm-breaking nascent soul pill. Taking it can take you straight from early golden core to early nascent soul, crossing a major realm and saving hundreds of years of hard cultivation. Choice 2. Hide your sharpness. Pick a magical treasure at will and take it away, without revealing your edge and without attracting attention. Reward. Minor desolate sky imprisoning finger. Shui Yan finished reading. The corners of his mouth twitched slightly. Minor desolate sky imprisoning finger. What the hell? But having said that, the realm-breaking nascent soul pill from choice 1 was indeed tempting. Golden core to nascent soul. Ordinary cultivators take at least 100 years, and those with poor talent can't even touch the threshold in their whole life. One pill to cross it directly. Time-saving and effort-saving. It is simply a lazy person's gospel. But Shui Yan only hesitated for a breath, then denied this idea. Shaking the Wuji immortal sect. He was a disciple who had joined for 2 months, with the appearance of the first level of chi refining, suddenly taking away 19 magical treasures. That was not shaking, that was courting death. At that time, the elders of each peak would treat him like a treasure to research, and Master Xian Qing would be the first to ask him where he got such great ability. Shui Yan muttered in his heart. System, I choose choice 2. Choice confirmed. Reward being distributed. Congratulations to the host for obtaining. Minor desolate sky imprisoning finger. A profound piece of information surged into his soul. Shui Yan only felt his right index finger warm up slightly, and he had already mastered all the essentials of this finger technique. As for how powerful it was not convenient to try here. He would talk about it later. He collected his mind, walked up to the demon-suppressing peak's array platform. 19 magical treasures were displayed on it, each with different shapes, and spiritual light contained within. Shui Yan's gaze swept over, finally landing on a long sword. The sword was about 3 feet long, the blade was light red, and a crimson gemstone was inlaid on the hilt, like a spark of fire solidified within. The overall appearance was extraordinary, quite prominent among the crowd of magical treasures. Shui Yan raised his hand, and hovered it over the sword body. Spiritual power was slightly emitted, and the long sword trembled slightly, then issued a clear sword cry, flying into Shui Yan's palm on its own. The moment the hilt entered his hand, a piece of information passed from the sword body into Shui Yan's mind. This sword is named Shaoyang, a top-grade magical treasure. There are 4 criteria for judging the superiority or inferiority of a magical treasure. First, the material itself determines the upper limit of the magical treasure. Second, the array patterns carved inside the magical treasure determine its power. The more complex and numerous the array patterns, the stronger the magical treasure's power. Ordinary low-grade magical treasures only have 1 or 2 basic array patterns. Mid-grade ones have 3 or 4. High-grade ones have 5 or 6. While top-grade magical treasures have at least 8 or more. And the array patterns are connected to each other, forming a self-contained system. Third, how much spiritual power the magical treasure can accommodate. The higher the capacity, the greater the power it can unleash. Low-grade magical treasures have limited capacity and might burst if a golden core cultivator pours all their energy into them, while top-grade magical treasures are hard to probe even for spirit-severing cultivators. Fourth, the innate special effects are the essence of a top-grade magical treasure, and the special effect of this Shaoyang sword is scorching sword energy. With ordinary spiritual power injected, the sword energy swung out carries a very high temperature, enough to melt metal and dissolve stone. If driven by fire attribute spiritual power, the power is even greater. Shui Yan held the Shaoyang sword, feeling quite satisfied. A top-grade magical treasure is enough for him to use until the spirit-severing realm. His gaze couldn't help but sweep toward the other 18 magical treasures on the array platform again. Knives, guns, seals, bells, flags, beads, each had spiritual light hidden inside, and the quality was not bad. A trace of reluctance flashed in Shui Yan's eyes. There are still 18 pieces, all shares accumulated by the demon-suppressing peak for several years. Today they were all laid out here, but he could only take one. Shui Yan took a deep breath, suppressed the greed in his heart, turned around and left the array platform, then retreated quietly, and bypassed from the edge of the crowd. His actions did not attract much attention. Shui Yan walked out of the main peak boundary, and stepped onto the mountain path returning to the demon-suppressing peak. There was no one around. He finally couldn't help but raise his right hand, to look at his index finger. Minor desolate sky imprisoning finger. Although the name was plain, things produced by the system have always been nothing but extraordinary. It's just that he didn't know how powerful it was. Shui Yan looked left and right, confirmed no one was around, and gently pointed at the mountain rock to the side. Spiritual power gushed from his fingertips, turned into a small beam of light, and hit the stone surface. With a bang, a hole the size of a fist appeared on the stone surface. The edges scorched black, and gravel splashed. Shui Yan nodded slightly. The power is acceptable. This was just his casual strike, without using his full strength. If he used his full strength, I'm afraid half of the mountain wall would be blown down. However, this was the sect boundary, so it was not appropriate to start a major conflict. So the testing was enough. He retracted his hand, and continued his journey. When he returned to the demon-suppressing peak, it was already afternoon. Shui Yan first went to the demon-suppressing hall to report to Peak Master Xianqing. Entering the hall, Peak Master Xianqing was meditating with her eyes closed. Sensing him come in, she slowly opened her eyes, received it. Shui Yan took out the Shaoyang sword from his embrace, and presented it with both hands. The disciple only took one. Peak Master Xianqing glanced at the sword, nodded slightly. Shaoyang sword, top-grade magical treasure. You certainly know how to choose. Keep this sword well. When your cultivation increases, you will naturally be able to unleash its true power. Shui Yan bowed. Yes, Master. Peak Master Xianqing waved her hand, signaling him to step down. Shui Yan withdrew and left, returning to the hillside courtyard, closed the door. Shui Yan placed the Shaoyang sword on the table, and looked at his right index finger again. Today's trip was not a waste, even though he didn't seek the limelight. A top-grade magical treasure, a finger technique supernatural ability. It was worth the price. As for the 18 pieces remaining from the 19 magical treasures, Shui Yan shook his head. He didn't think about them. A person cannot be too greedy. He sat cross-legged on the bed, placed the Shaoyang sword flat on his knees, closed his eyes and focused, and ran his spiritual power to slowly nurture the sword body. Top-grade magical treasures have spirituality, and need to be nurtured with heart blood. After a long time, only with heart-mind connection, can one unleash the great greatest power. This is a water-grinding job, not to be rushed. Just as Shui Yan was closing his eyes to nurture the Shaoyang sword with his own spiritual power, suddenly, fate choice was triggered again. Ding! Detected that in the Luoxia Valley, about 300 miles southwest of the Wuji immortal sect, a dispute is occurring. Feng Jinhuang, a junior of the Phoenix clan, is surrounded by 5 spies of the blood god demon sect, her life hanging by a thread. Choice 1. Depart immediately. Go to Luoxia Valley as if by chance. Intervene in the dispute, and save Feng Jinhuang. Reward: a drop of Phoenix essence blood. Choice 2. Everyone sweeps the snow from their own door. Do not care about others' frost on the roof. Reward: realm-breaking nascent soul pill. Taking it can take you straight from early golden core to early nascent soul. Shui Yan finished reading. His brows lifted slightly. Phoenix clan, blood god demon sect. What were these things? How could this kind of fate choice appear out of thin air? But he had no time to investigate deeply. Just looking at the reward for choice 1, it was indeed tempting. Phoenix essence blood. It sounded like an incredible treasure. But this kind of thing looked very troublesome. He had joined the demon suppressing peak for only a little over 2 months, and hadn't even become familiar with the sect's territory. So how could he dare to rush into this kind of right and wrong dispute? Moreover, with his surface cultivation of the first level of qi refining, how to explain his sudden appearance at the scene of the dispute 300 miles away? Fly there? Shui Yan muttered in his heart. Select choice 2. Choice confirmed. Reward being distributed. Congratulations to the host for obtaining realm-breaking nascent soul pill. A pill appeared out of thin air in front of Shui Yan. The pill was crystal white all over, with fine patterns flowing on the pill body, emitting a clear and strange fragrance. Shui Yan didn't say a word, opened his mouth and took the pill. The moment the pill entered his stomach, a magnificent medicinal power, like a broken embankment, rushed from the dantian toward the limbs and bones. The 5-colored golden core shook violently, and began to rotate rapidly. The medicinal power poured into the golden core endlessly, and the volume of the golden core expanded slowly, fine cracks beginning to appear on the surface. Not long after, with a crack, the golden core shattered. The fragments of the shattered golden core did not dissipate, but were refused and condensed under the wrapping of the medicinal power, transforming into a brand new form, a tiny person, sitting cross-legged in the dantian. The tiny person was only an inch tall, with vague facial features, the whole body emitting a gentle 5-colored light. It was Shui Yan's nascent soul. The entire breakthrough process was silent. Outside the small courtyard the wind was calm and waves were quiet. No celestial changes, no thunder tribulation. Primordial formless, covered all movements cleanly. Shui Yan opened his eyes, and let out a long breath of turbid air. He perceived the changes in his body. In the golden core period, spiritual power was like a lake. After nascent soul, spiritual power was like an ocean. The two could not be mentioned in the same breath. Ordinary cultivators take at least 100 years of hard work from golden core to nascent soul, and those with good talent also take several decades. But him, less than a cup of tea's time. This realm-breaking nascent soul pill is truly a good thing. The corners of Shui Yan's mouth raised slightly. Although he liked steady growth, who would refuse this kind of free major realm breakthrough? At the same time, 300 miles away, Luoxia Valley. In the valley, spiritual energy was raging, and spells were flying everywhere. 5 figures surrounded the valley, trapping a young girl in the center. The young girl was about 18 or 19 years old, in a crimson long dress, with a beautiful face, and a little vermilion birthmark between her brows. It was just that at this moment, her face was pale, and her mouth was overflowing with blood, clearly having suffered heavy injuries. This girl was named Feng Jinhuang, a direct descendant of the Phoenix clan. The Wuji immortal sect is a behemoth in the entire cultivation world, and the Phoenix clan has been on good terms with it for generations. In the past, to show sincerity, they specifically sent a junior of the clan to join the Wuji immortal sect for cultivation. This person was Feng Jinhuang. Because of her premature birth, her innate life essence was incomplete, and the path of cultivation was much harder than that of ordinary clansmen. In addition, she was only 20 years old, with a cultivation of only early golden core. The 5 people surrounding her were dressed in the uniforms of Wuji immortal sect disciples, each wielding magical treasures, their expressions indifferent, but their cultivation was definitely not as simple as it appeared on the surface. The 5 were all spies planted in the Wuji immortal sect by the blood god demon sect. They had been lurking for many years, joining different peaks, and each possessed a magical treasure to cover their aura, disguising their true early nascent soul cultivation as foundation establishment. Today's matter was a big chess game laid out by the blood god demon sect. Kill Feng Jinhuang, and frame the Wuji immortal sect. At that time, the Phoenix clan would be enraged, and turn against the Wuji immortal sect, and the two major forces would kill each other, allowing the blood god demon sect to sit back and reap the benefits. The 5 had laid laid the layout for a long time, and today they finally waited for Feng Jinhuang to go out alone. So they set up an ambush in Luoxia Valley. Miss Feng, why bother putting up a desperate fight? The leader sneered, and the magical treasure in his hand turned into a black light, straight for Feng Jinhuang's heart. Feng Jinhuang tried her best to dodge, but her shoulder was grazed by the black light. Blood splashing, she bit her teeth tightly, saying nothing. The Phoenix clan never begs for pity, but she knew clearly in her heart, today, it was probably going to be a bad omen. The five were all early nascent soul, while she was only early golden core, and with incomplete life essence. Her combat power was greatly discounted. Being able to hold on until now was already the limit. Another spell boomed over. Feng Jinhuang could not dodge in time, was hit in the back, and the whole person flew out several zhang, falling heavily to the ground. She struggled to climb up, but found her spiritual power was almost exhausted. 5 nascent soul cultivators. Dealing with an early golden core person with incomplete life essence was inherently a crushing situation. What a pity. The beauty of the Phoenix clan. Another person licked his lips. If it weren't for the instructions from above to frame, I would like to. Shut up. The business is important. The leader raised his hand, condensing a pitch-black beam of light in his palm, aimed at Feng Jinhuang's head. Miss Feng, my apologies. The black light shot out. Just at this moment, boom, a heavenly thunderbolt fell violently from the sky, the silvery white thunder light shattering the black light to pieces. The remaining power was not reduced, turning into 5 branched forks, booming onto the 5 people. The 5 early nascent soul blood god demon sect spies couldn't even issue a scream, before they were suppressed to the ground by the thunder light, unable to move. Inside the heavenly thunder, contained a suffocating pressure. That was the might of a human immortal. Feng Jinhuang struggled to raise her head, looking toward the arrival, her eye socket slightly red. Master, a figure descended from the sky, landing beside Feng Jinhuang. It was a middle-aged woman, dressed in a dark blue Taoist robe, her features cold and clear, surrounded by thunder light, her momentum like an abyss. The person who arrived was the peak master of the Dharma aspect peak of the Wuji immortal sect, Peak Master Lane. Peak Master Lane raised her hand. A stream of warm spiritual power transferred into Feng Jinhuang's body, stabilizing her injuries. Don't be afraid, Master is here. Feng Jinhuang nodded slightly, her lips moved, but in the end, she didn't say anything. Peak Master Lane turned around, her gaze falling on the 5 disciples suppressed by the thunder light. She recognized these people. Heavenly Sword Peaks, Danxia Peaks, Qishuan Peaks. They were all ordinary disciples of each peak, usually inconspicuous, but at this moment, the aura they exuded was clearly early nascent soul. The magical treasure that concealed their cultivation had lost its effect under the impact of the thunder light, revealing their true colors. A cold light flashed in Peak Master Lane's eyes. She did not open her mouth to ask, but raised her hand and gripped with 5 fingers in the air, performing the soul-searching technique. 5 invisible forces instantly invaded the sea of consciousness of the 5 people, probing straight into the depths of their souls to extract their memories. When a powerhouse at the human immortal level performs soul-searching, ordinary nascent soul cultivators simply have no power to resist. The memories of the 5 people flashed before Peak Master Lane's eyes like a lantern, lurking, waiting. Today's action, the instructions of the blood god demon sect. However, just as Peak Master Lane touched the core memories, a blood-red light shone from the depths of the 5 people's souls simultaneously. Forbidden technique triggered. Not good. Peak Master Lane's face changed slightly, instantly propping up a thunder light shield, shrouding Feng Jinhuang inside. Boom, 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 boom. 5 loud noises sounded almost simultaneously. The souls and physical bodies of the 5 nascent soul cultivators, under the traction of that blood-colored forbidden technique, exploded together. Wuji immortal sect, Dharma aspect peak. Inside a cave dwelling, Feng Jinhuang sat cross-legged on a cushion, the spiritual power in her body slowly circulating, nourishing the dark injuries left by that bitter battle. Her face was exquisite, the vermilion birthmark between her brows like a bit of flame solidified. Such an appearance would make people unable to look away no matter where it was placed. It was just that the cave dwelling was quiet at this moment, and no one could appreciate this beauty, since being rescued from Luoxia Valley by her master, Peak Master Lane. That day, Feng Jinhuang had been recuperating here. Peak Master Lane bestowed many healing pills, and personally dredged her meridians with spiritual power. The injuries were already not a big problem, and the rest was just water grinding work. Before Master left, she had once said, this matter would surely be investigated until the truth came out, and she would be given an explanation. Feng Jinhuang didn't have many words for this. She kept the good that Master did for her in her heart. No need to hang it on her lips. Time is like flowing water, unnoticed. In a flash, 2 years had passed. Demon suppressing peak. In the small courtyard on the hillside, Shui Yan stood in the yard, holding the Shaoyang sword, practicing a sword technique over and over again. The sword body was light red, and as it swung, it brought up strands of scorching sword energy, scorching the air in the yard until it was slightly distorted. This sword technique is called the mysterious ice sky-splitting sword technique. The name sounded domineering, but in reality, it was just common goods recorded on the second floor of the scripture repository. When Shui Yan chose it back then, it wasn't because it was powerful, purely because the contrast between the name of this sword technique and its actual effect was huge. approach. It is named Mysterious Ice, but the sword energy used is scorching hot. The Shaoyang sword itself comes with high temperature, and the two complement each other. Fighting can cause serious cognitive deviations in the opponent. Mysterious Ice. This is clearly fire. Shui Yan imagined the opponent's exclamation before death, and the corners of his mouth rose slightly. 2 years of time is enough for a person to settle down many things. Shui Yan developed a cold temperament, not intentionally, but because of the environment. In the demon-suppressing peak, from top to bottom, besides Master Xian Qing, there was only him. When Master Xian Qing was in secluded cultivation, the entire mountain was as quiet as a grave. Therefore, Shui Yan spent most of his time alone, practicing, reading, staring into space. Over time, that coldness seeped into his bones. Shui Yan's cultivation also climbed quietly in this quiet environment. Surface cultivation. He steadily suppressed it at the 6th level of qi refining. This progress was neither fast nor slow. For an ordinary disciple with decent aptitude, reaching the 6th level of qi refining in more than 2 years of entry is considered standard and steady. No one would think it strange, but secretly, his true cultivation had already reached the 3rd level of nascent soul. This day, after Shui Yan finished practicing sword, he put away the Shaoyang sword, and sat at the stone table in the yard to drink tea. He calculated in his heart, from the 3rd level of nascent soul to the 4th level is a hurdle. Once crossed, it is the mid-nascent soul stage, and both the spiritual power thickness and solidity will have a qualitative leap. At his current cultivation speed, if he ran the technique with all his strength, it would take about another 3 to 5 months. Months passed. Shui Yan sat cross-legged on the bed, and slowly opened his eyes. From breaking through the 3rd level of nascent soul to the 4th, it took him less than 4 months. The progress was steady and solid. Nascent soul levels 4 to 6 are collectively called the mid-nascent soul stage. This kind of cultivation, placed in ordinary small sects, is already an ancestor figure sitting in one corner. Even in a behemoth like the Wuji immortal sect, the mid-nascent soul stage can be called a backbone player. Shui Yan felt the surging spiritual power in his body, and nodded satisfactorily. Then he couldn't help but recall, ever since the last time the fate choice was triggered, and he chose not to save Feng Jin Huang, this system had no movement at all. System, oh system, you haven't moved for almost 2 years now. Don't tell me you've abandoned me and ran away, he said casually and humorously in a low voice. As soon as the words fell, ding, fate choice triggered, detected that the host's current age is under 50, and cultivation has reached the mid-nascent soul stage. According to the ordinary standards of the cultivation world, among 100,000 people, there is not necessarily one who condenses the nascent soul before the age of 50. The host has achieved this, yet hides on the demon-suppressing peak, unknown to anyone. Choice 1. Make a name for yourself. Challenge the various talented disciples who joined the Wuji immortal sect in the same batch with your true cultivation. Defeat them one by one, and let the various peaks know that the demon-suppressing peak has produced a peerless genius. Reward. 5 elements realm-breaking bead *1. 5 elements realm-breaking bead. This bead contains the power of the 5 elements generating each other. After refining, it can help the host go directly from mid-nascent soul to early spirit severing stage, crossing a major realm, with a solid foundation, and no side effects. Choice 2. When the trees in the forest are too tall, the wind will break them. Continue to hide your sharpness, keeping a low profile, and cultivate steadily. Reward. Supreme Netherworld World Suppressing True Dragon Dharma Aspect. Supreme Netherworld World Suppressing True Dragon Dharma Aspect. After activation, a 10,000-foot black dragon phantom appears behind the user, carrying 3 supernatural abilities. Netherworld Dragon Breath burns the divine soul. Supreme Void Dragon Steps travels thousands of miles in an instant. World Suppressing Dragon Might suppresses the combat power of lower realm cultivators by 30%. The power of the Dharma aspect grows with the user's cultivation. Shui Yan was stunned. He just complained a little, and it really triggered a fate choice. He carefully finished reading the first choice. His brows lifted slightly. Challenged the talented disciples of the same batch? He recalled that among the disciples who entered that batch, there were indeed a few famous ones. That guy with sword-like eyebrows and star-like eyes from the heavenly sword peak seems to be called what? Forget it. He couldn't remember clearly. Danxia Peak and Qishuan Peak also had a few good seeds with decent aptitude. If he really went to challenge them with his mid-nascent soul cultivation, that would indeed be a crushing victory. A 5 elements realm-breaking bead, going from mid-nascent soul to early spirit severing, was indeed a good thing, but actively revealing his nascent soul cultivation, isn't this self-exposure? Shui Yan almost didn't hesitate. System, I choose choice 2. Choice confirmed. Reward being distributed. Congratulations to the host for obtaining Supreme Netherworld World Suppressing True Dragon Dharma Aspect. A vast amount of information surged into Shui Yan's soul, as if countless images exploded in his mind. In the ancient times, the black dragon traversed the sky. Under a single claw, mountains and rivers crumbled, and rivers flowed backward. Those images vanished in a flash, yet imprinted the entire essence of this Dharma aspect in the depths of Shui Yan's soul. Shui Yan closed his eyes for a moment, finished digesting it, and slowly opened his eyes. He raised his right hand, and looked at his palm. As long as his thought moved, he could trigger the spiritual power in his body, to condense that 10,000-foot true dragon Dharma aspect behind him. How powerful powerful it was still unknown. But this Dharma aspect was definitely worth much more than any realm-breaking bead. The realm-breaking bead is just a one-time consumable, but the Dharma aspect is the foundation that accompanies a cultivator for a lifetime. From nascent soul to spirit severing, from spirit severing to human immortal, the Dharma aspect will grow with it. The further it goes, the more terrifying the power becomes. Shui Yan was a bit restless. He really wanted to go outside the courtyard right now, to activate the Dharma aspect and see it. But in the end, he suppressed this thought. Although the demon-suppressing peak has few people, there still lives a peak master Xian Qing on the peak. The perception of the human immortal stage is not something to be trifled with. If he activated the Dharma aspect here, peak master Xian Qing would probably perceive it instantly. How would he explain it then? Could he say, "Master, the disciple is at the 6th level of Qi refining. I don't know why I suddenly condensed a true dragon Dharma aspect." If he said this, even a fool wouldn't believe it. Time passed leisurely, and in a flash, another year went by. Demon-suppressing peak. In the small courtyard on the hillside, Shui Yan sat cross-legged on the bed, slowly withdrew his energy, and exhaled a breath of turbid air. In this year, he had not been slack. His true cultivation had steadily advanced from the 3rd level of nascent soul to the 4th. His spiritual power became increasingly thick. As for his surface cultivation, it had reached the peak of the 9th level of Qi refining, just one step away from foundation establishment. His surface progress being so fast, was, in the eyes of others, naturally because peak master Xian Qing's pill supply was never limited. Shui Yan knew clearly in his heart, that this master's treatment of him, was truly with the utmost sincerity. Although he couldn't use these pills, it didn't affect his gratitude for her intentions. Early this morning, Shui Yan washed simply, went up the mountain path step by step, and went to the demon-suppressing hall to pay respects to peak master Xian Qing. Entering the hall, peak master Xian Qing was holding an ancient volume, not knowing what she was reading. Sensing Shui Yan entering, peak master Xian Qing raised her eyes, looked him up and down, and then nodded slightly. Not bad. Peak of the 9th level of Qi refining, just one step away from foundation establishment. You have entered the sect for 3 years, and to have such progress, you have not failed my expectations. Shui Yan bowed. That the disciple can reach today, is entirely due to master's wise teaching, and the pill supply has never been short. Otherwise, even if the disciple had the heart, I would not have the strength to climb. Peak master Xian Qing heard this, and waved her hand. Resources are but external things. Your willingness to work hard yourself, is the key. If you were a lazy character, even if you ate pills as meals, it would be hard to have such cultivation attainments. After saying this, peak master Xian Qing changed the topic. Let's stop the small talk for now. I called you here today, because there is another important matter to inform you. Shui Yan felt a chill in his heart. Please speak, master. You have entered the sect for 3 years, and have been cultivating on the demon-suppressing peak the whole time, never going out for training. Now you are about to break through to foundation establishment. Solely bitter cultivation makes it hard to break through the bottleneck. As it happens, there is a secret realm about to open at the Dharma aspect peak. I plan to have you go along with the senior brothers and sisters from the previous batch of the other 9 peaks, for some training. This will be of great benefit, for your breakthrough to foundation establishment in the future. Shui Yan was slightly startled. Secret realm? He asked curiously. Master, what is the origin of this secret realm? The disciple has never seen detailed records in the miscellaneous books of the scripture repository. Peak master Xian Qing explained patiently. The Wuji immortal sect has 10 peaks in total, except for my demon-suppressing peak which has no secret realm. The other 9 peaks each hold a secret realm. These secret realms were opened or refined by sect predecessors using great supernatural powers in ancient times, hiding the universe within, becoming a world unto themselves. And the 9 peak secret realms open in order every 10 years. Each time they open, the most outstanding immortal seedling disciples of that batch are selected from each peak to enter for training, searching for treasures. Now that it's the rotation, it just happens to be the opening of the secret realm of the Dharma aspect peak. Shui Yan heard this, and understood in his heart. It was that same set again, like the last time receiving magical treasures. According to the rules, he, as the latest disciple to enter the sect in this batch, was not qualified to enter, and would have to wait for the next batch, 10 years later. But since the demon-suppressing peak only had him as a disciple, if there were benefits, naturally, special treatment had to be done, letting him, this lone sprout, fill the spot. Shui Yan listened, nodding on the surface, but in his heart, he had already made up his mind. He didn't want to go. This kind of place sounded very troublesome. Just as he was pondering how to find an excuse to politely decline. Ding! Fate choice triggered. Master Xian Qing expects you to go to the Dharma aspect peak secret realm for training, to sharpen your Tao heart, and lay a foundation for the foundation establishment breakthrough. However, the trip to the secret realm, though having opportunities, also contains variables. Choice 1. Politely decline master's good intentions, and speak frankly that you do not want to go. Reward: realm-breaking spirit severing pill. Taking it can go straight from nascent soul to early spirit severing stage, with a solid foundation and no side effects. Mid-grade spirit treasure, star storage ring, containing 10 miles of space, capable of storing living things. Spirit plants planted inside can also survive. Choice 2. Do not let down master's good intentions, and agree to go to the secret realm for training. Reward. Top-grade magical treasure. Demon refining banner, specifically restraining the demon race. Holding it can suppress the combat power of demon beasts by 30%, and can collect the souls of killed demon beasts into the banner to be used for one's own purposes. Shuaiyan's eyes moved slightly. Realm-breaking spirit severing pill. Good stuff. And the star storage ring. 10 miles of space. Can store living things. This is even better stuff. As for the demon refining banner, it was also not bad, but he didn't want it right now. Shuaiyan almost didn't hesitate, muttering in his heart, "System, I choose choice 1. Choice confirmed. Reward being distributed. Temporarily stored in the system space, to be extracted by the host when needed." The 2 rewards lay peacefully in the system space. Shuaiyan felt assured. He raised his head, and respectfully bowed to Peak Master Xianqing. "Thank you, Master, for your great love, and for worrying about the disciple's future. But the disciple's aptitude is dull, having entered the sect for only 3 years, with a shallow foundation. This trip to the secret realm, the senior brothers and sisters of each peak are all from the previous batch, with cultivation far superior to the disciple. If the disciple goes, I fear I will drag others down, and also fail master's expectations. The disciple begs to stay on the peak, wait until my cultivation is stabilized, and then plan for training matters." The intention to decline was already obvious. Peak Master Xianqing listened, her expression unchanged, only looking at him faintly. "Finished?" Shuaiyan was stuck. "Finished. Whether you want to go or not, you have to go. The leader elder is Peak Master Lane of the Dharma Aspect Peak, human immortal stage. If there are any changes in the secret realm, she will naturally take action. You just need to follow the team. Do not run around, and there will be no danger," Peak Master Xianqing said calmly. Shuaiyan was completely awkward. This was not quite the same as he thought. He thought Master would be reasonable, or at worst, persuade him a few more times, and if he insisted, the matter would pass. He didn't expect that this master, who was easy to talk to on weekdays, would be so tough on this matter. Shuaiyan twitched his lips, but in his heart he was calculating rapidly. The rewards were already in hand, and the system didn't say it would take them back. But if he continued to refuse, and annoyed Master, causing some ripples, that would not be beautiful. He quietly perceived the system space. The star storage ring and the realm-breaking spirit severing pill lay there quietly, motionless, with no sign of being retrieved. Shuaiyan was relieved. Since he couldn't refuse, he could only bite the bullet and go. Since Master has said so, the disciple dares not refuse anymore. For this trip to the secret realm, the disciple will definitely act cautiously, and not cause trouble for the sect. Peak Master Xianqing nodded slightly. Her expression cleared up a little. "It's good that you can figure it out. Go back and prepare well. Tomorrow morning at the Mao hour, 5 to 7 a.m. Go to the main peak's Wuji hall to assemble on time. There will be an elder to take you all to the Dharma Aspect Peak together." "Yes, Master." Shuaiyan saluted and withdrew, turned and left the demon-suppressing hall. Walking down the mountain path, he walked while pondering in his heart. Secret realm, human immortal sitting in command. According to Master's words, it seems there is no major danger. But Shuaiyan always felt something was wrong somewhere. Things in the cultivation world, where is there anything foolproof? What if something goes wrong? He shook his head, not wanting to think about it anymore. If the soldiers come, block them. If the water comes, cover it. In any case, he couldn't hide from this. Returning to the hillside small courtyard, Shuaiyan first closed his eyes and concentrated, driving, primordial formless, to perceive the area within 100 zhang. No one peeping. Shuaiyan felt at ease. With a thought, he probed into the system space. That realm-breaking spirit severing pill hung quietly within it. He originally chose choice 1, because he didn't want to go to the secret realm. Who knew Master's attitude would be so tough, saying, "Whether you want to go or not, you have to go," directly blocking the path of retreat. He had to set off tomorrow at Mao hour. Although the rewards were not taken back now, but when he set off to go, what if the system judged that he accepted the secret realm trip, and took the rewards back? Shuaiyan felt it was better not to gamble on this kind of thing. Take the pill first. As for whether this counts as exploiting a bug, hey, you can't say it like that. He really didn't want to go. He was forced. This is not that he couldn't refuse. System brother, this should be fine, right? Shuaiyan asked silently in his heart. However, the system made no response, not even popping out a punctuation mark. Shuaiyan was not surprised. This system of his, ever since it was bound, just triggered fate choice from time to time, issued 2 options, and played dead after issuing rewards, never talking nonsense, and never being like those other coquettish and cheap systems that would sell cute and chat. It was very cold. Shuaiyan didn't think anymore, took the realm-breaking spirit severing pill from the space, and placed it in his palm. The pill felt slightly cool to the touch, emitting a clear and strange fragrance. He opened his mouth and swallowed it, closed his eyes and refined it. The pill entered his stomach. Unlike the last time he took the realm-breaking nascent soul pill, this time the medicinal power did not rush wildly, but permeated into limbs and bones. 5 viscera and 6 bowels gently and firmly, and then converged into the dantian. Shui Yan's mind gradually calmed down. Those distractions from earlier, master's toughness, the unknown of the secret realm, the nervousness of exploiting a bug, gradually dissipated like smoke and dust, replaced by a kind of unprecedented clarity. In Shui Yan's dantian, that tiny five-colored person the size of an inch slowly opened its eyes. Streams of extremely pure medicinal power were surging from all directions, wrapping the tiny person inside. Shui Yan felt a flash of inspiration, and activated the technique of the fifth level of the Supreme Right Heart Demon Suppressing Qi Controlling Return to Origin Manual. The path of spiritual power circulation was completely different from usual. It was no longer limited to meridians and dantian, but began to permeate toward the soul. So-called spirit severing. What is being severed? The classics Shui Yan had flipped through in the scripture repository of the demon suppressing peak gave the answer. Golden core as base, nascent soul as form, and spirit severing is the merging of nascent soul and soul, making the divine soul transform into a higher level existence. Golden core period. Cultivators initially perceive heaven and earth. Nascent soul period. Cultivators can exit the body in nascent soul form, but the nascent soul is fragile, and if without the protection of the flesh, it is easily damaged. And the spirit-severing realm, the nascent soul and divine soul are thoroughly fused, transforming into a Yuanshen, primordial spirit. The Yuanshen does not perish. Even if the physical body is destroyed, one can still be reborn through possession like a nascent soul, or roam the heaven and earth directly in the form of a Yuanshen. According to the classics, spirit-severing cultivators are no longer mortals, but have half a step stepped into the threshold of an immortal. The Yuanshen communicates with heaven and earth, and can draw the power of heaven and earth for one's own use with a gesture, the power far beyond that of a nascent soul. At this moment, the five-colored tiny person in Shui Yan's dantian was undergoing a drastic change. Under the wrapping of the medicinal power, the tiny person's features became solid, and its form gradually became transparent, as if transforming from a solid to light and shadow. This was the transformation of the nascent soul into the Yuanshen. When the last trace of medicinal power was absorbed by the tiny person, the five-colored light and shadow shrank violently, and suddenly bloomed, turning into a piece of five-colored light and mist, filling the dantian. The light and mist surged, slowly condensing, eventually turning into a human-shaped light and shadow about 3 inches high. It was exactly Shui Yan's Yuanshen. Once the Yuanshen was formed, Shui Yan only felt his perception expand several times over. Ordinary cultivators breaking through to spirit severing must encounter Heavenly Tao Thunder Tribulation. This is Heavenly Tao's test for those who act against heaven. However, in Shui Yan's small courtyard, the wind was calm, the waves were quiet, and in the night sky without a cloud for 10,000 miles, not even a trace of thunder light flashed. Primordial formless covered all movements cleanly. Heavenly Tao Thunder Tribulation, non-existent. Midnight, demon suppressing peak, without a cloud for 10,000 miles. The moon was very round, very bright, like a jade plate hanging in the sky. The moonlight spilled down, plating the entire peak with a layer of silver white. The star-filled galaxy spanned the sky, stars twinkling, dazzling like sand. Shui Yan sat cross-legged on the bed, slowly opened his eyes. Surface cultivation, still at the peak of the 9th level of Qi refining, without any change, but true cultivation, had jumped from the 4th level of nascent soul, to the 1st level of spirit severing. The Yuanshen sat in the dantian, the five-colored light and mist flickering like breathing. Shui Yan felt the vast, sea-like spiritual power in his body, and felt much more assured in his heart. Heading to the Dharma aspect peak secret realm tomorrow. He was originally a bit nervous, but now with spirit severing cultivation as his foundation, his sense of security increased sharply. Even if something really went wrong in the secret realm, he would not be without the strength to fight back. Of course, if he could not expose it, he wouldn't expose it. Steadiness first. Shui Yan withdrew his energy and got up, then silently checked in his heart how many good things he had gotten from the system. First, it was the supernatural ability obtained upon entry. Selfless and formless body. His current flesh body was the selfless and formless body. The main body was hidden in the flesh and blood of this selfless and formless body. Even if this avatar was beaten to death, the main body remained, and he could still manifest another one. Life-saving divine skill. Irreplaceable. Second, the 9 dragon heaven swallowing pattern. 9 dragon patterns were imprinted in the depths of the soul. Every time one was activated, one could obtain the power of a dragon. When he first obtained this item, his cultivation was shallow, and he could only activate 1 dragon pattern. Now that he had stepped into spirit severing, Shui Yan perceived it silently. In the depths of his soul, the 9 dragon patterns lay quietly, 4 of which were glowing slightly, as if they could be awakened at any time. Looking at them, he could now use 4 dragon patterns at will. After that, it was the spell Minor Desolate Sky Imprisoning Finger. Although the name was plain, the power was not bad. This technique grows with the growth of cultivation. The spirit-severing stage's execution was worlds apart from the casual strike on the mountain path years ago. After that, it was the supreme netherworld world-suppressing true dragon Dharma aspect obtained from the choice triggered in the previous year. This Dharma aspect, undoubtedly, was the most powerful among all the rewards. After activation, a 10,000-foot black dragon phantom appeared behind him, carrying 3 supernatural abilities: Netherworld Dragon Breath, burning the divine soul; Supreme Void Dragon Steps, traveling thousands of miles in an instant; World-suppressing Dragon Might, suppressing the combat power of lower realm cultivators by 30%. The power of the Dharma aspect grows with the growth of cultivation. If he activated it with all his strength, I'm afraid even Mahayana big shots would not dare to look down upon it. Of course, he would never activate it easily. Trump cards, the deeper they are hidden, the better. Inventory finished. Shui Yan had a thought, and took the star storage ring out of the system space. The ring was star-colored all over, as if condensed from a point of stars in the night sky. The color was low-key and restrained. If you didn't look carefully, you would think it was just an ordinary black iron ring. But if you looked closely, you could see starlight flowing in the depths of the ring surface. Quite elegant. Shui Yan liked it very much. Not ostentatious, and good-looking, and it was produced by the system, so it could be used directly without refining. He put on the ring, thought about it, and put everything in the house that could be used into it. A few bottles of pills, clothes to change, some spirit stones. One by one, the Shaoyang sword did not enter the ring. Weapons, after all, are safest when held in the hand. In case he encountered an enemy, he could use it as soon as he raised his hand, saving the moment of taking it out from the ring. Shui Yan hung the Shaoyang sword at his waist, got up and stood in front of the window. The moonlight spilled through the window lattices, casting a play of light and shadow on his face. Since coming to the Wuji Immortal Sect, this was the first time he had gone dungeon crawling. Tomorrow, Mao Hour, Main Peak Wuji Hall, Dharma Aspect Peak Secret Realm. To tell the truth, Shui Yan actually felt a hint of expectation in his heart. It was not expecting opportunities or treasures. He was not short of these things for now. What he expected was a kind of long-lost freshness. The next day, before dawn, Shui Yan got up. After washing simply, he pushed the door and went out. Shui Yan raised his hand and performed a seal. The Shaoyang sword unsheathed in response. Hanging half a foot in front of his body, he jumped onto the sword body, and then turned into a light red stream of light, sweeping rapidly down along the mountain path. This ability of sword control flying could be performed during the chi refining stage. It was just that those with low cultivation could not fly high, could not fly far, and could not fly long. Now that his surface cultivation was at the peak of the 9th level of chi refining, performing the sword control technique was naturally not afraid of being criticized. Moreover, the Wuji Immortal Sect didn't have those broken rules. Disciples are not allowed to sword control fly, must apply for a token, layered approval, none of that. The sect's attitude toward this was quite liberal. If you want to fly, fly. If you fall, don't cry. Shui Yan stepped on the sword and moved forward, piercing through clouds and breaking mist, his robes fluttering. Not long after, the square in front of the Wuji Hall on the main peak came into view. Quite a few people were standing in groups of 2 or 3 in the square. Shui Yan retracted the sword and landed, found an inconspicuous corner to stand still, lowered his eyes and said nothing. Another quarter of an hour passed, and the disciples of each peak arrived one after another, adding up to about 40 people. Shui Yan glanced at them. Most of their cultivation was between the late foundation establishment stage and early golden core stage, much stronger than the batch of people who received magical treasures last time. At this time, a figure walked out of the Wuji Hall. The person was in a gray-white Taoist robe, with hair and beard half white. It was actually an elder of the Mahayana stage. Shui Yan's heart tightened slightly. Mahayana, existence only one step away from transcending tribulation and ascending to human immortal. Placed outside, that is a character who walks sideways. The gray-robed old man stood firm in front of the hall, took out a jade book, unfolded it, and began to call the roll. Heavenly Sword Peak, 3 people. Danxia Peak, 4 people. Qishuan Peak, 2 people. One by one, names were called, and the disciples of each peak responded one after another. When the demon-suppressing peak was called, the gray-robed old man raised his eyes and looked at Shui Yan in the corner. Demon-suppressing peak, 1 person. Shui Yan bowed. The disciple is here. The gray-robed old man nodded slightly, closed the jade book, and waved his hand. A spirit boat about 10 zhang long appeared out of thin air, suspended above the square. The boat body was pitch black, and a crane with spread wings was carved on the bow. Lifelike. Get on the boat. The gray-robed old man jumped onto the bow of the boat first, and the disciples filed in one after another. Shui Yan followed at the very end, found a position near the edge, and sat down. The spirit boat shook slightly, and then turned into a stream of light, speeding toward the southwest direction. Shui Yan stood by the boat, looking down. This was his first time coming to a mountain other than the main peak and the demon-suppressing peak since he entered the sect 3 years ago. The 10 peaks of the Wuji Immortal Sect are all far apart from each other, at least several hundred miles. On weekdays, if there was nothing, disciples rarely walked across peaks. At this moment, looking from the air, the Dharma Aspect Peak was completely different from the demon-suppressing peak. The demon-suppressing peak was steep, with with jagged rocks, permeated with a murderous air. While the Dharma aspect peak was much more spiritual and beautiful, the mountain body was like a blooming lotus flower, with 5 side peaks surrounding the Dharma aspect peak. The vegetation on the peaks was dense, waterfalls hung down from the mountainside, and a group of palaces could be vaguely seen on the peak. It was truly like a fairyland. Shuayan secretly sighed in his heart, but on the surface, he was calm. The spirit boat descended slowly on a wide platform on the mountainside of the Dharma aspect peak. The disciples got off the boat, and the grey-robed old man exchanged a few words with a guarding elder of the Dharma aspect peak, then bid farewell, and drove the boat back to the main peak. Shuayan stood in the crowd, looking around. Quite a few people were already waiting on the platform. Looking at their uniforms, they were all disciples of the Dharma aspect peak itself, about 60 or 70 people, scattered in groups of 2 or 3, either talking in low voices, or resting with eyes closed. Counting the 40 or so people from each peak, the total number of people entering the secret realm this time, was probably over 100. Just as he was thinking, a figure stepped on clouds from the direction of the peak top. The person was in a dark blue Taoist robe, with cold and clear features, surrounded by thunder light. It was exactly Peak Master Lain of the Dharma aspect peak. Rumor has it that this Peak Master Lain's thunder magic was superb, having once suppressed 3 human immortal level demon cult elders with her own power, steadily ranking in the top 3 among the 10 peak masters of the Wuji immortal sect in terms of combat power. At this moment, the surrounding disciples were discussing in low voices. Peak Master Lain came in person. I heard that after the Luoxia Valley incident last time, the Peak Master's temper became colder. Hush, speak quietly. The Peak Master's ears are sharp. Peak Master Lain landed in the center of the platform, scanned the audience, and said, quiet. Everyone felt an invisible pressure rushing toward them, and the discussion stopped abruptly. This opening of the Dharma aspect secret realm. The rules are the same as in previous years. Groups of 10, freely team up. After teaming up, I will send you into the secret realm collectively. Inside the secret realm, you are responsible for your own life and death. But if there is anyone who intentionally harms fellow disciples, I will definitely take their life myself. Her tone was calm, but no one dared to doubt the weight of these words. A human immortal big shot. No need to talk about the power. Everyone started to team up one after another. Disciples from each peak who were familiar with each other gathered in one place, and very quickly, they formed teams of 10. Only Shuayan stood in place, unattended. There was no other reason. The cultivation was the lowest. The disciples present, the worst from each peak, were at the middle foundation establishment stage, and Shuayan, on the surface, peak of the 9th level of chi refining. In the eyes of these people, no different from a mortal. Bringing him is equal to bringing a burden. Shuayan didn't mind. He stood in place with a calm expression, and even had the mind to appreciate the scenery around him. Seeing this, Peak Master Lain frowned imperceptibly. Her gaze shifted, and it fell on her own disciple, Huanger. In the crowd, a young girl in a crimson long dress responded and came out. Feng Jinhuang walked up a few steps, bowed and said, Master, you take him. Peak Master Lain pointed at Shuayan. Feng Jinhuang looked in the direction pointed by Master, her gaze falling on Shuayan. 9th level of chi refining. She paused slightly, but had no objection, nodding and saying, yes. Immediately, she walked to Shuayan's front, and said faintly, Junior brother, follow me. Shuayan bowed. Thank you, senior sister. Feng Jinhuang said no more, turned around and walked back to her team of 9. The 9 people were all disciples of the Dharma aspect peak, 3 men and 5 women. Most of their cultivation was between the peak foundation establishment and early golden core. Seeing Feng Jinhuang bring back a burden at the 9th level of chi refining, everyone's expressions were different, but no one spoke against it. This was the intention of the peak master of the Dharma aspect peak. Who would dare to oppose it? Isn't that just lighting a lamp in a latrine looking for shit? Shuayan stood silently at the end of the line, maintaining a slight distance from everyone. Seeing that each team had already formed, Peak Master Lain nodded slightly. Since the teaming up is finished, I will speak about the precautions for the Dharma aspect secret realm. Everyone listened intently. Inside the Dharma aspect secret realm, the demon beasts are at most tier 4, equivalent to the early nascent soul cultivation of the human race.